all three, in fact, all algorithms now are running managed by IBM. When it comes to now the intersection of cybersecurity, something that is really, when we think about where we are with quantums, probably the area where their most activity is actually happening in terms of practical application. I have a large team, I have over 12,000 people globally. A big proportion of them are out talking to our clients right now about what PQC actually looks like and how they can get ready and get prepared for it. So looking forward to the discussion, perhaps drilling into that a bit more, because we're all pretty practical given that we actually have quantum capability in IBM already.
Hi, I'm Morten Swimmer. I'm probably the odd man out here. I'm a technology researcher looking at threats of the future for Trend Micro. We're an enterprise security company situated basically globally around the world. My team is involved with looking forward to the threats, what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years, not what's happening now, so don't ask me about the latest ransomware attack, because I won't know. But I was asked a couple of years ago by our CEO, what is all this quantum stuff? So, and since I do have a quantum mechanics background, I said, sure, I'm going to look into this. Yes. So, yes, we've looked into this. It's one of the things we look at. We also look at other topics as well. But I'm going to have my microphone too.
Andrew, but different David. Different David, exactly. So, good morning. Thank you for the hospitality to our hosts. I'm Andrew McLaughlin. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Sandbox AQ, which is a spin-out from Google, about 2 years old, maybe 3 years old now. We're based on running quantum equations in advance of large-scale quantum computing platforms being generally available. So on the pro side, that means we run we've built a business around simulating molecular level interactions on GPU platforms to do drug discovery, battery chemistries, things like that. On the defensive side, we have a cybersecurity business that is designed to anticipate the coming wave of quantum encryption attacks and to apply quantitative AI, which maybe I'll explain later, but not LLMs, not generative AI, but machine learning that's anchored in equations and science for the purpose of defending systems and infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you for taking interest in that topic. Thank you for having me. My name is Florian. I'm Director of the Swiss National Cybersecurity Center. I'm responsible for the Swiss National Strategy, its implementation and development, and my team is currently working 24/7 to coordinate all security measures around cybersecurity with police, with intelligence service, with private companies to keep you safe and secure here. So if something doesn't work in cyberspace, you can blame me. If you think we're doing a good job, please, honor my team that's working to keep all of that running. And of course, our partners all across Switzerland and also the globe. It's an international event. My background is in IT, in computer science. Now, as I said, leading a federal office. I'm coming from private industry, so I see both sides, and maybe understand also a little bit the conflict of the two opposing sides sometimes.
I'm Greg Porzingis. Don't listen to the hotel staff. They'll tell you the meeting's not going on and you'll leave and then come back. So I apologize. I'm the Chief Security Officer for Cloudflare. I also run all of the threat intelligence powered by the entire network. I've been a CISO at large places, group CISO I was the last CISO for Silicon Valley Bank. It's a good drink story. I was also the group CISO for HSBC. So I've done this for over 20 years. Cloudflare, just perspective, got about a quarter of the internet, stopped 180 billion attacks, and we're one of the few organizations on the internet that's all of our internet-facing encryption standards are quantum. And we've been there for a couple of years.
Thank you very much. So we have an amazing list of speakers with a very broad range of knowledge. Maybe because we're in Switzerland and we're a Swiss company, maybe can we start in Switzerland on, yesterday there was some news that Switzerland will be excluded from the AI chips. I don't know if you saw that announcement. So that means that there's going to be some kind of limitation of the number of NVIDIA chips that we can buy to accelerate AI in the country. Are you aware of that, or taking you by surprise? Or because obviously, if you are taking care of Switzerland, you know about it. Do you have any comments on that?
So I didn't read the news yesterday. We had different priorities. Obviously, there were some news about heavy cyber attacks, which was not true. It's just DDoS. It's, you know, your protest. So I can't in detail comment about that. The way we are set up is that digitalization is independently transferring, so we of course collaborate. The availability of GPU chips, even though it interests me personally, and some people might recognize my tie. If you don't, maybe you want to Google it, what it could be. So of course, that's one of the topics. Let me give you an answer that maybe goes a little bit more generic realm. Of course, Switzerland is not independent of supply chains, right? Chips, be it GPUs, be it sub 5 nanometer logic level chips, they're not produced in Europe, right? And we are dependent on Asia, namely 2 companies for the sub 5 nanometer, right? There's one company in the Netherlands that produces the machines. There's US companies that produce the software. And an interesting thing is that Europe, the EU, decided to produce fabs themselves. So everyone is trying, with the change in geopolitics, leading from globalization to regionalization, to build up its own capability. And while, of course, what you mentioned is a setback, I would like to push Switzerland, and again, it's just the security part that I can directly influence, towards a position where we say, okay, how can we get a hold in the supply chain? Where can we actually be part of a critical field, be this chemicals, be this lithography, be this verification. So for example, there was very interesting research by the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. How can you verify chip design, whether what's actually implemented is what you sent into the fab, right? And I think, unfortunately, they're not doing very well there. And one of the problems is that I'm quite often in discussion rounds like these, and quite often we have a lot of top management here, and I think that's maybe different here, that say, well, you know, that's a technical thing, we don't need to understand, but we need to think strategically about these things.
Thank you very much. Maybe talking about the understanding the risk and challenges of quantum computer, maybe IBM has always been a thought leader and an implementer leader on quantum technology. If you can give us the current state, there's a lot of hype on quantum. Yesterday we were in a dinner with CNBC and they were discussing this subject that quantum has been hyped to the maximum, as it was the case at last year. What is the real situation, and what are the threats? Is any? Are we really facing a situation where it's going to break RSA, triple death? Is happening now? What is your views on that?
Yeah, so it is for real. We have real human capability out there that we are providing for certain clients, and we are continuing to develop research. So there's no question about the fact that quantum's here, it's running, it's available. I've actually seen 1 or 2 of the actual real quantum computers myself, so I can assure you that is the case. We'll show you a picture if you want. It's pretty cool. In fact, one of the things that always strikes me as quite interesting is that you get to the quantum computer and then you need cooling around it, and so it actually feels quite mechanical when you actually see the thing in real life. And it brings me back to the time I used to be the CISO at BT. BT was involved in the first computer right back in the day called Colossus, and that's really quite mechanical. So these things, it feels like sometimes history repeats itself. Anyhow, quantum is for real, quantum is there, we continue to develop, we're already providing services to some of our clients. Now I'll get to the root of your question, Carlos. So what do we actually see? So, let's not just don't take it from me. You can see that the NIST talked about the fact that 1 in 7 potential companies are potentially vulnerable in 26 already to post-quantum situation in terms of being able to decrypt. There's lots of different speculation around that, but I think that's pretty plausible. And then by 2030, we know which is the date that the US government has set by the time at which organisations need to be quantum ready. So I think it's real, there's some real timelines, and then conversely, on what we are doing, and there's many on this panel who know a lot more about the types of threats, so I won't go into that. I want to talk a little bit more just now about what actually that means for large enterprises today. Of course, the big risk that we're facing is the steal now, decrypt later. So that's basically the thing that most organisations are really bothered about. I said earlier that the algorithms are now there. We work in consortium with many organisations, and some WISeKey as well, with DigiCert and others, to basically look at how we go about this. And the reality is, like with many of these things, so to get away from the hype, to get to the reality is diligence and programmatic approach is necessary, which is really about understanding firstly what data organisations have to start with, and then understanding what generally could be vulnerable in their post-quantum era. So for that we have developed, and we're taking very much a sort of bench to enterprise approach with our research teams to say how we've developed a number of products and services that we can can deploy into our clients to do that work, to establish that cryptographic bill of materials, so we can now start implementing those algorithms, in the PKI space to be sure that we are ready. So that is a systematic approach. I think most organizations that we're talking to are now in the discovery phase. We can run those tools and use AI to run those tools as well, which is a crossover area, to be ready to deal with that main issue, which is that when does 2048 become genuinely vulnerable? And as we said, that is potentially as soon as next year.
That's very, very encouraging, and that corrects a lot of public information that quantum was 15 to 30 years ahead. So if that is the situation, how are we defending ourselves to that situation? And maybe I give the floor now to Bernard to give us some views on what are we doing on post-quantum, and he has a very interesting news. Will be go first, because this is going to be explained today here. Bernard.
This is part of the solution. This is part of the solution. I'm going to open the box to show you, just like qubits are real. I mean, this is not fantasy. This is not PQC. So post-quantum is real. So here I'm going to open this box and to show you. Yeah, this is the first. I mean, this is this little tiny thing that is right in the middle of it. This less than 5 millimeter square thing in the middle of this board. This is the first secure microcontroller implementing running post-quantum. Post-quantum meaning protocols, algorithms that are capable to resist to IBM qubits, basically. And so because quantum is a fantastic opportunity, this is just the power that quantum is bringing is just a fantastic step. But there is a withdraw, is the fact that all the algorithms that are protecting our life, they will not resist to the quantum computer. So and really the RSA algorithm, you probably never heard about it, but that's this protocol that is securing your Visa card, your passport, etc. They are all based on RSA. It will take a glimpse of a second of a quantum computer to break it. Basically, your Visa card does not resist, and you can make a clone in less time to say it. That's the solution. So we are the first one at SEALSQ. The first one. We started that 8 years ago, and with multiple crypto engine, and now this is the first commercial product that is implementing post-quantum algorithm. So in our case, this is Dilithium, this is Kyber. They are new, completely new generation of algorithm that will run here at the same speed, and this is the challenge in our industry. The same speed and the same security that we are running your Visa chip is running RSA. So it is here, it is real, and we're going to showcase to post later today a demo that show this chip, and will be the first showing the benchmark, how this chip compared to a non-post-quantum post-quantum. So we are very, very, very proud at SEALSQ to show that achievement.
And just to add to that, we are being approached by several companies that they are basically helping us to attack the chip, to see how the chip will defend an attack. That includes Cisco, that includes Google. We'll love to do the same thing with IBM, with Cloudflare, with you guys, so we can really work together towards bringing a solution which is very badly needed in the market. Because if the quantum computer really arrives, if it's in the hands of IBM, I don't have any issues. But if that falls in the hands of the wrong people, that might be an issue that needs to be considered. So maybe in order to discuss a bit on the technology from the potential acceleration of AI through quantum, are you considering, I mean, quantum will be so powerful that will accelerate the capabilities of AI, maybe bring AI to the next AGI level? You are doing so much work on AI. What is your views on that?
Yeah, so we've been having like an active discussion on this very question this week, and we'll kind of come at it from two angles. First, the people who I respect most who sort of think on this topic are feeling that quantum AI is going to be very useful for certain application areas, but not broadly, generally as useful as maybe everyone hopes it'll be. And so one of the areas where I think it can be very useful is in cyber attack and cyber defense. So on one hand, you know, it is coming. People are trying to get their heads around application areas where quantum advantage will actually be meaningful. And then on the flip side, you know, particularly around cybersecurity, I'm hearing a distressing lack of awareness and investment in quantum cybersecurity. So I'm very glad you're doing this panel today because already cybersecurity is insufficient investment for a lot of critical infrastructure. For example, I was talking to a colleague yesterday who runs a lot of power plants, and they literally litter the parking lot with flash drives in the hopes that someone will pick one up and hack the, yeah, and I mean, they're getting hit with every attack possible. Now with quantum coming, there's going to be a whole new vector and a different attack surface. And so AI is going to both make that attack more powerful and also hopefully bring more resilience to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, Sandbox, by the way, before you even start, thank you very much for joining us. We had a great discussion with Jack, and we love what you guys are doing. And again, we should cooperate as much as we can because what you're doing is great. Maybe you can introduce Sandbox because maybe not necessarily known to everybody as a spin-off of Google, right?
Sure.
And then, yeah.
If it's okay with you, can I just add a thought here just to make something concrete, and then I'll do the propaganda. So let's be like super concrete for a second, and let me just give you two very specific examples of where quantum and AI really ratchet up the threat picture that we have to contend with. So a way to think about quantum equations and the quantum computers that support them. But let's talk about the equations for a second, because the equations can run on GPUs just like they can run on quantum computers. So they're a problem today. They're going to get a lot worse in the future. They're a problem today. So what's cool about quantum equations is that a way to think about AI in general, or the large language model approach to AI, is that it's an incredible achievement of compression. So you can take the entire internet, all the Wikipedia pages, books, Reddit, subreddits, everything, and what we're doing is compressing it into like 20, 40 gigabytes of weights and biases. It's an amazing thing, actually. And then those weights and biases allow you to produce these interpolated answers that are, you know, give me a grocery list in the style of Shakespeare, or, you know, and make it rhyme. And it'll do that because it's got this like body of knowledge. So anyway, so there's this active compression. When you add lots and lots of variables to the problem, that kind of compression becomes very unwieldy, and our computers can't really run it. And that's why you get these kind of like million-year scenarios to do decryption, because anyway, that's the limitation of existing computer infrastructures and the map that we run on. So what's cool now is that we've been learning how to do quantum equations where you use kind of like higher dimensional math to represent and to do that compression in vectors, which the human brain can't even really understand. It's like a very strange figure that we can't picture, but when you go to like 2,000 dimensional, you know, sort of spaces, you can compress a whole lot of information into a single vector, and that allows you to run analysis and simulations, which quantum computers are going to be exceedingly good at making possible. So one kind of attack that we need to be aware of is something called polymorphic malware. You can call it lots of different things, but polymorphic malware is basically malware, or you can think of it as viruses or worms in the kind of like old language, but like bad software that wants to do bad things that can adapt in real time. And it can adapt in part because of the second thing that I want to mention, which is quantum equations are really, really useful for running simulations in complex environments. So we use this, so this is the propaganda part. Sandbox is using this kind of like math and anticipating quantum computers, but running on GPUs now, to do things like simulating how a molecule will bind with a protein in order to disable that protein from causing Alzheimer's. So that's like a thing that we work on now. We focus on neurodegenerative diseases, battery chemistries, things like that, but where the environment is super complicated, so many different variables will define whether this electron is going to form a covalent bond between these two. You know, it's a very complicated problems, but we use quantum equations to do it. If you're an attacker, you're going to be able to simulate a very complicated defense environment and run 100 million simulations and then power your polymorphic malware to be able to go and in real time navigate and adapt in that environment and either, you know, spoof its way through or dupe its way through or make its way through your defensive, you know, kind of collection of defensive elements. So anyway, I just want to be very concrete about what we're talking about. That kind of attack, massively simulated to find the vulnerabilities and then software which can adapt in real time to work its way through, that's what we have to deal with today. Not very efficiently, the attackers have not figured this out. And maybe the one note of optimism that I'll just end on is that defenders these days generally have a ton more data than the attackers. And so your ability to prepare a defense, to train your defense, to understand your attacks, to defend against them is an asymmetric advantage if you're a defender, if you prepare for it, you're programmatic about it, you take steps now. That's the lesson everybody, it's always the case, prepare for the bad, but the bad is really sophisticated and you need to take it seriously now.
Thank you very much, absolutely. And maybe move to you, Christina. You have been for so many years working on cybersecurity, explaining companies and governments the consequences of not investing in cybersecurity. What this new equation of quantum brings to that work? What is the advice that you will give companies? And what are the industries also that you think will benefit first from this breakthrough?
Well, so I co-founded a company that with the former CEO of Medtronic in Spain that's working with the EU on quantum for pharma. They're doing some trials in that space and also doing some stuff with AI with respect to transplant patients and trying to automate some of the post-operative aspects of that. And so, so I both on the launching things as well as the cybersecurity piece of this. But it's interesting because when it comes to quantum and AI, I mean, everybody knows that eyes on glass and that whole defense mechanism has not been very effective, only because there's not enough analysts. They're tired. They used to rely on these books that they would create with responses and trying to sort of automate some typical behaviors that a hacker would take, right? But this whole ability to be able to more proactively be able to respond to those, because you see these anomalies, just the same way that fraud is using financial markets as a mechanism to detect. I mean, I know with my American Express card, it's like the slightest little move and I get a call and I just love it, right? But I have to say that we really needed that kind of proactive capability in the cybersecurity space. And a lot of the MSSPs now are basically saying they're seeing a decrease in some of their business because of these automated capabilities in AI. Now we add quantum, right? And so quantum can actually help with respect to, my fellow panelists have talked about with respect to analyzing information and also in creating defense mechanisms as well. And so, but it all boils down to the flow of data, managing that flow of data. And of course, I used to work for RSA, and I guess in Shanghai University, they actually decrypted an RSA small key, not one the size of traditional, but they actually managed to decrypt a small key. And so that does create a sense of fear, right? And while Bitcoin has two types of encryption, one symmetric, another one asymmetric, and only one of them is an immediate threat, but just the perception of threat makes people wonder, well, what's the long-term lifespan of Bitcoin in this post-quantum world, right? So just the fear alone impacts how people will behave with respect to their adoption of Bitcoin. So I think that has ramifications beyond just the use of it in terms of decrypting things, because I think that's going to take a bit of time. And I do think that from an infrastructure perspective, the SCADA devices, though, analog, are actually the biggest threat, right? But I think that there's this move to actually replace all of these devices that are so critical within infrastructure with post-quantum devices is probably one of the biggest steps that we can take so that you don't have national internal issues in cybersecurity, prevent you from reading the news. Yeah.
So maybe Grant how quantum will play on the cloud? I mean, are we imagining a situation where companies could basically just plug and play into quantum cloud services, or are we in a situation where companies will buy quantum computers like Rigetti is developing now? Do you have views on that, or many other things that you would like to say around that?
That's a good question. I think that, I mean, most of the vendors are going to supply these solutions. If I think about, even when I was at the large bank, I had $1 billion budget, but there's so much work to be done. So I think that a lot of the innovation you're seeing is going to be done probably non-corporate, the IBMs and your company, which I forgot the name of it, are going to be there. And I think the large organizations will look at quantum, but I think we're going to be heavily reliant on the vendors to do it. We see that even with us on, hey, how do we make our internet more secure? They come to us. And I think it is, one thing I'm listening to this panel is very interesting because, like, all we see are more breaches. And so, like, I always like to have this conversation at 10 o'clock at night because it's fascinating. The conversation like before 10 o'clock at night is like, we see more breaches and more breaches and more breaches. I've been a CISO since 2003, and it just goes up. So something's broken, and they go, the hardest thing to do is access control. I'm trying to make crypto. Nobody can exchange keys, and so like I always think quantum's kind of funny a little bit because it's like, why am I going to break the encryption that it's a clear text database with all of your information? And that's why you see these breaches, right? Like very rarely do you see a breach that they decrypted something. And so I think solutions that we all talk about are how do we make this easier to make it quantum proof, because the polymorphic malware scenario that we've all discussed for 20 years is scary. If you apply that to many organizations, probably more than many, probably more than the majority, probably more than 90% are not secure. Like, what do we do if that's released? And what is that released if that's in industries, critical infrastructure, financial services, right? There's all these resilience programs because we know it's going to go down. And I think when we think about this, especially with the compute power of quantum, with the ingenuity of AI and bad people's mindset, it's going to be there. So I always think as a pure practitioner, pure operator, is how do we absorb this technology into an organization that actually can make us secure, because we are all struggling in every organization just to maintain basic hygiene. I always tell people, like, you should always implement multi-factor authentication, but how many organizations do it? 100%? Zero. I'm close, because I've been pushing on it. And I think these are things that are vital to what we do in the future. And so when we look at these solutions, I always think, how do I use it? Because that's the problem. Like, we can have quantum computing, but like, why do we need quantum computing? Or I can answer the question of, have I seen AI attacks in the telemetry? I'm not sure if they're AI or they're if-then statements. And so we've had some major attacks on us that, we'll see an attack, we'll block it, it will call polymorphic AI, changes, and then they'll change again. But it might just be as simple as, if you block, we do this. If you block, we do this. And so what we're seeing, and I've seen this over and over, is attackers are not going to exploit, let's just say that 3 powers or 4 powers on the internet, governments have polymorphic malware. They're not going to use it. They're just going to open the front door and walk in because blocked it. And so why, and this is a conversation you'll hear with the government is, why am I going to use my bullet that can take down anybody when I can get hired as a subcontractor and create havoc, which is what we saw enough yesterday, right? And I think those are things to think about when we think of quantum, where to apply it, and how to operationalize it is going to be very key.
Thank you, Florian.
Yeah, I think it's an important issue that you raised, and it reminds me, Polymorphic stealth virus was, to my knowledge, first mentioned in the big black book of computer viruses, which was published 30 years ago. Yeah. And yet, there's not really a use for that, even though it's an interesting concept, and there have been attempts of infiltrating networks using similar technologies. I think when we talk about quantum, post-quantum, when we talk about these things, to me this is not so much an immediate issue that we should panic today, but it is just a normal change problem, right? So we need to adapt to cryptography. This is going to take time. It's going to take 10, 20 years. Depending on which researcher you talk to, we have these 10, 20 years. It's fine, right? Maybe it's 5 years. We don't know. Then we accelerate. It's a little bit like preparing for the millennium bug. So you should be aware, you should take out the hype, and you should start to plan to change. And then interesting dynamic comes in, also from the view of government. What if everyone wants to change at the same time? Are there enough suppliers? Are there enough Swiss suppliers? I would like the Swiss businesses to get the money, right? They're financing my office, so that'd be good. The next question is, how does it increase the need for computing power, power consumption? How does it affect the power grid? How does it then affect international interdependencies? And I think these are, how can suppliers of technology that you actually use, like Cloudflare, like others, how can they integrate it so you can buy it as a service? Because we had an interesting discussion yesterday. The problem in security quite often is not that the technology isn't there. The problem is, one, it's hard to get the money to run it. 75% of Swiss businesses earn less than $500,000 a year. That leaves them calculating down to the sectors 2,500 to 7,500 Swiss francs a year for all their security investments. I'm not sure what they get with Cloudflare for that, or other companies to say. So it's very hard. How can we make the market function, right? That actually companies can do that. How can we educate leadership to start to understand that they need to understand technology? I would never hire a CFO that doesn't understand finance. Why do you hire a CIO without an IT background? I don't understand that. It's a huge problem, right? And then third, how can we actually ensure that this technology is easy to use? And I think, for example, your DDoS protection shows that nicely, right? You open the contract, it's done. And I think that's how security must work. It just needs to be done.
Yeah, I think about like your device. I think it's interesting because like if I could encrypt all my sessions and all the connectivity, exchange keys, do SSH right versus just not use keys and logging SSH. Like that could be very powerful because it's very hard to get the operational environment and then do it securely. Now quantum, I'm not going to do it securely, they're not going to use quantum. But I think where I think was really interesting, especially in this, quantum compute with AI, the other argument I'll make is we're looking at the wrong data. That's a whole other conversation. But when we start looking at the data, the quantum power as we start to look at neural networks, because most AI today is machine listening, or machine learning statistics, logistic regression. It's artificially AI. Because we're looking at the wrong data because we don't have the compute power. So to Mark's point of the idea of having quantum computers that we can leverage to do that, that's powerful. To leverage that technology where we can make things simpler is tremendous power to give us attacks because the attackers have infinite time. They just need to get things right once. And that's it.
Yeah, and that goes in line with our thinking in CLSQ because we started to do IoT security at the secure element level. So we injected keys using PKI, public infrastructure, using our own cryptographic key. But then we realized that this is not enough, right? And you have to go to the next line of defense. And there's where we started to work on quantum. And we are in that journey because the moment those computers arrive in the wrong hands, I think that's the key question. Will they be authorized in the wrong hands? We're going to be exposed, right?
Yeah, so things like IoT, like when they pin certificates into applications, well, that's a good use to use quantum attacks. And so, because we all do it, we've seen it, it's hard, and all the engineering, I'm going to take that pin cert, that's going to be too hard. That's a very common thing, but that becomes, those use cases for quantum attacks are going to be interesting.
Just maybe some views on from your own experience in trade macro. What are you focalizing now in the quantum era?
So actually, I think a lot of people made very, very good points, and a lot Cloudflare for already implementing post-quantum security on their servers, and IBM coming up with the algorithms so that we all can use. We also play a little bit in the IoT field as well. We have a lot of customers who have small devices, and when I was talking to one recently, one of the problems that I discovered was that while things like MLChem have are not actually that bad on the CPU as one would think, but the key sizes are huge. And when you talk about IoT, you have to start planning for the greater bandwidth that you need to be able to run these algorithms. That's one of the things that we discovered recently. And that I think also applies for a lot of the like the DSA algorithms, the digital signature algorithms have the same problem as well. So this requires a lot of planning, and I think IBM contributed the CBOM project, I believe, to the OWASP people, and I think that was a great thing to do, so that people
Software to do that. We developed some software specifically to do that.
Yeah, and that's also super important. So the whole crypto agility is going to be very important going forward, because in all honesty, talking to my own cryptographers at Trend Micro, we don't really know why these are supposed to be secured, and that goes for all algorithms, not just those quantum ones. It's just they have a very good track record. MLChem is like 12 years old now, but it's based on some older principles. There's in the pipeline this classic megalease that's been around for 30 years, and the only reason why it's considered secure is because it's not been broken so far.
Mark, yeah, maybe during whatever you're going to say, maybe to add a bit more on the collaborative aspect, the Teca Core, many of you guys together with us, we are a member of the Teca Core. By the way, Teca Core is, we have been supporting the Davos event for now 5 years, and it's an amazing group of companies there. Where do you see the collaborative effort that Teca Core can bring into this post-quantum and quantum era?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of collaboration going on. We've formed a number of consortium. Teca Core is right at the heart of a lot of what we're doing, and we will continue to do that. And I'll come back to that in a second, but I just want to mention a couple of things based on Grant mentioned a few things and others as well. One of the things that I think is really exciting about this, first thing, let's not forget the upside of what quantum computing can do for us. And we talked a bit about the fact that we can now apply quantum algorithms and quantum mechanics to a world to solve problems which we just don't think that we're anywhere near being able to solve at the moment. Bringing natural world processes that we can't even imagine into the world where we can replicate those in a certain way. So the ability to use technology to really advance what we're doing in society more broadly is really exciting, and I think quantum being able to give us that step change is something that we're at IBM very excited about in the Teca Core, and the way we work in partnership is all about how do we bring that capability quickly to reap all those benefits. But back to the topic, never miss an opportunity, I think, is often the mantra in the security world. And this is exactly that point, which is, Grant talked about it, many others have talked about the fact that being able to use this moment, if you want, whatever that moment is, right? And I've given some stats about where I think the moment is, 2030 is a fairly big yardstick. To get underneath what is the cryptographic bit of materials inside that organization. And with this as well, it's not, then you immediately get back to the data, and then you immediately get back to the crossover point about how you think about AI tools being implemented in enterprises. Because let's not forget, most organizations are still often in proof of concept when it comes to AI. And so there's a nice crossover there of just really having to rethink the data architecture, what the cryptography that sits around that is, and then programmatically work that through to deal with the fact that this isn't all out there, this is actually much more practical, and coincidentally, by doing that, organizations get a better understanding of what they've got, and hopefully shut down some of the very obvious vulnerabilities that we're all focused with today all the time, because that's really what's happening. So I think the exciting part of this is, yes, all the new technology and everything else that goes with it, but also the opportunity that it affords us, the security people in this room, to say, let's take a step back, let's really look at our data, let's really look at our cryptography that sits around that for obvious reasons, but also that then helps us to clean up our organisations to a certain extent, make them less vulnerable to stuff today. My very final point is for polymorphic malware, there's also polymorphic encryption, which is another thing that we're working on very seriously at IBM as well. And there's some quite interesting stuff there, where we're beginning to now reduce the amount of power and compute power needed to make polymorphic encryption reality, which I think is quite exciting as well. But that's perhaps for another day.
And just to add a very practical note to that, and taking Grant's observation that there's a lot of super practical operational stuff that really should be the focus. If you're going to be programmatic about it, take the long view and also deal with the kind of prosaic issues that confront security every day. And this is my note of propaganda. One thing that everybody should be doing to start off with is building an inventory of the cryptography that you use, treating cryptography like it's a thing that you have to worry about as a class of kind of assets. And we and others, not just us, but have tools that will go look across your network, build the inventory, give you an AI-powered prioritization, clustering of the issues, give you some checklists so that you can then start to upgrade the cryptography. These days you can just go grab code out of GitHub, eyeball it, deploy it. I mean, there's just so much, there's so much available to you if you're serious and programmatic and start now. You can just be practical. It's just good hygiene.
But a lot of organizations don't even know what the data inventory is. I mean, you ask them, okay, you've just acquired a company. I mean, obviously the Marriott situation, right? That was an example of a company being acquired where they didn't do the due diligence on the data. I think that taking them to the point where they're now asking about the cryptography is a step function above that.
Although as Andrew says, the tools are there to do just that, and that's exciting for us because AI now there's practical applications. We'll get back to where's the ROI practical application. We, and not just us, many others have got tools to be able to do that. Let's get that AI to put it to work. That's the key thing. And one other thing I'll just say, homomorphic encryption, by the way, just that's another topic.
And then just what also, because yesterday we were in a dinner with interesting people, and one of the questions was, is that not too much hype going on AI? Well, we have been talking now for 2 years here in Davos everywhere. Where are the real applications yet, besides what ChatGPT and a few others are doing? Can you give us some feedback on that? What are the really proof of concept that has become essential now on AI as not just bluff and hype, which is we're very good here in Davos to create, by the way.
Yeah, so there's sort of good news and bad news, and I'll bring the answer back to the quantum topic as well, and I'll say there's very good news for everyone on this panel and very bad news for anyone managing a corporate budget outside of the sale. And I'll come back to that point. So on the AI front, in theory, we should be seeing 80 to 90% productivity gains in certain areas of business. The reality, the field reports are starting to come back. We're seeing 12% to 26% productivity improvements. Now that is still a staggering number. It's dropping the bottom line, it's roiling labor markets, there's a lot of transition. We've done a lot of work on this with Evercore ISI, so if you take a look at the generative AI impact report, the AI impact navigator, we've got a lot more detail there. So then we're asking the question, well, if the theory says 80% and the reality says 12%, what's going on? And it turns out that we're dragging behind us 40 years of tech debt and 40 years of data debt. So all these companies bought lots of other companies and never integrated the system. Some of these banks are still running COBOL, Fortran, and PL1. And it's staggering the amount of, so the smartest AI play I heard last year, this company in Europe, their entire year was devoted to simply building their common data lake. They were like, we can't do anything with AI until we have that common data lake. But most people are not doing that. Now we get to quantum, and suddenly we are going to be double. It's like a geometric multiplier on tech debt. Maybe the pain is going to be so severe that people will finally upgrade their stack. But that's what's going to unlock those 80, 90% productivity gains, is finally investing in the tech architecture. And the quantum threat is so significant that maybe people will finally say, okay, between the AI opportunity and quantum threat, I really do need to upgrade my systems.
Can I just add something to that? So if you think about it, in Italy and some other countries in Europe, in 5 years in Italy, there would be a net of 50% less doctors in an aging population. 50% less doctors in 5 years because there aren't enough people going into the system. So if you don't think about IoT devices and AI, how you need that productivity gain in order to address the need of the market, right? So and we were talking about replacing existing systems, but we have huge societal problems that need solutions. So
Yesterday, a CEO told me I will be the last CEO in my company operating people.
Yeah, no, and you're exactly right, you're gonna fill a lot of labor gaps, and yet, you're still dealing with Italian EMR systems.
yeah, I mean the biggest issue in trying to replace it is you have these European restrictions. I'm American, so you can see only half European, but you have these restrictions that kind of prevent the access to that medical data, and so a lot of the research is being done to make up that gap is held back, and so they have to think this through.
We have a few minutes for the audience. If you have any questions to the panel, please raise your hands and somebody will bring you a microphone. There's a question there. Angelique or Jenna, could you please bring a microphone to the gentleman? Yeah. Maybe next to me.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to the Bitcoin, which was a bit of discussion there, which is really interesting because obviously protecting, Bitcoin against quantum computing is one of the bigger challenges that applies back onto the corporate side as well. So what do you guys see how the community is going to react and move to protect themselves against, ECDSD, whatever it is, and moving from there?
Well, thank you for that, because I brought the topic up. So there are two algorithms. So the one involved with the key exchange is the one that's the most vulnerable, so they say. But I'm actually saying it's the perception of the vulnerability that affects its adoption even more so than the vulnerability itself, because I think it will still take some time. And even if this evolves, it's not like everyone's going to have a quantum computer and they're going after Satoshi's number. It's still going to be a fair amount of computing. But people are saying that the Bitcoin community may, the developers may come up with a mechanism, because Algorand and a few others have already taken that approach. But it is the perception that creates more of an issue. And of course, wherever there's money, as you can see with financial institutions, they're the ones who get attacked.
There's kind of a joke going around that the way we'll know that there's going to be that a quantum computer has become large enough is when we see the Bitcoin price go down. So.
I do think that the perception itself makes people worried about this multi-million-dollar 5-year horizon.
The algorithms they can be implemented.
Yeah, I mean, one of what's interesting about Bitcoin specifically is that it doesn't have a philosopher king who can direct the community to do, a fork. And so what's interesting is, I think the human collective action problem of forking and then everybody upgrading their wallets, and it just sounds like a very or the whole thing. I mean, I think that this
perhaps Melania does actually figure it out, but it is interesting, and I think it's just it is a perception problem, but it is also, I mean, just in general, some of the things that are going to be on protecting Bitcoin do come back to just general protection against algorithms, etc., and the corporate side of things. So the community does seem to be doing something.
So where do those algorithms come from?
Well, yeah.
Because that's my view, let's just say it's secure. We use IBM, we use these chips. Natively, those organizations, are they secure to protect the source code and all of the algorithms done well? Because we all know software creates vulnerabilities, we just have to find that. And that's the worry I always have is, I'm not going after the crypto, I'm going after the company, the source, the process, because then it's game over.
Maybe I'd like to add to that when the topic was brought up. Today's security problems are not usually the hardest problems. It's vulnerabilities that you know of that you could fix it, but the companies don't fix. It's the missing of an SBOT. It's the missing of a crypto. That's a real problem. But I also think we're not having the right discussion, because we often say companies must do this, companies must do that. No, the product that you put on the market should be secure in the first place. I'm an engineer, I know you can't prove correctness in an NP-hard problem. You can't do that, but you could put better quality software and hardware on the market, because if we would build bridges or buildings like we build software, we wouldn't be sitting in here. We would search a field where we don't get hit by debris. And I think, no, it's reality. Come on, let's be honest. We're not doing a good job as an engineering discipline. We took the engineering out and basically put it out on the market, make the big buck quickly, and then sell software to fix what we've broken in the first place. It's a genius business model. Not bad, but at the same time, companies can't use it, right? And also, companies struggle with using SIM systems because they don't really have it to address the problem. That's where the chance of AI and actually having a good migration plan to PQC and so on help you to actually clean up the mess on the one hand side from the vendors that can now use this technology to put out better software. There's been very interesting research with DARPA, for example. How can AI be used for verification of software? And that can be applied to cryptocurrencies. A good friend of mine, he works with the Ethereum Foundation. They do a lot of formal proofing of their algorithms. If you can do that more efficiently, if you can compute it more efficiently, that's going to help. But, and that's where we governments also come in the end. You mentioned there's an interest in data sovereignty, there's an interest in, connections, and not everyone is your friend, so I think that's where we need to work together with industry to generate a more beneficial environment where companies can earn the money that sell products, but also those that buy are secure, and we actually can defend government interest.
Thank you very much. There's a question at the,
Yeah, back here in the corner. Thank you, Patrick Rausauer. I'd like to move one abstraction level up and would like to ask the question, there's a saying, US innovates, Asia operates, and Europe regulates. Where can we, is this going to be a chance for the West or a risk versus developments in Asia? And where does Europe stand on all this? We've seen this large AI investment plan coming up in the US. Do we have in Europe sort of a lag in that development? Do we have a chance to catch up? And Switzerland as a fundamental democracy with notoriously slow speed in developments, where do we stand on this?
Florian.
Yeah, so Switzerland is not European Union, it's mostly the European Union that regulates. We're approaching it a little bit differently in Switzerland. And I think it shows in the innovative products that we have. We have, WISeKey, we have IDECONTIC, we have others in the field of GPS and so on. We're just often not aware that they're actually globally relevant and sellable products. I think over-regulating is a very, and especially in the security area, even yesterday, I was on different events and everyone was like, you need to regulate more. I'm like, no, that's not going to solve your problem because, the bad guys, they don't care about laws. That's the thing. On the other hand, not regulating can also lead to problems. That's what we see in the US. I see your point, but your healthcare system has a bit trouble with their data too, because it's too accessible. And so I think it's about finding the right balance. And that's the key, right? How can you regulate to make an even market where competition can actually happen and where you don't create inequalities, but at the same time not regulate too much to hinder innovation. And then there comes in ethics, and that's where it gets really complicated. We have to with the cheap technologies. Right? And we will have the same with AI. And I do think, I quite often hear in discussion with my European colleagues, oh well, we regulate before the problem arrives. And quite often states are criticized to not regulate quick enough. But I think that's the wrong approach in my personal opinion, because how can you put that sensible regulation towards a problem that you don't yet understand? And I just think we as governments were doomed a little bit to lag a little bit behind it. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, that's a good position, and Switzerland at least is a bit different from the others, right?
I just quickly add, as the other European person on the panel, whose country is also not in the European Union any longer. So, leaving regulation to one side, the one thing I would say quite clearly is where I see the role for governments getting the power infrastructure right, especially in countries where you've seen this big migration now, power to renewables, and so the existing distribution networks need to be redone, planning laws to be able to do that. That's all really good things that governments can do to really help create capability to run the type of stuff that we're talking about, quantum and other types of computing power. The rest of the regulation, I think, you, Florian, you've made the point, but there is a really big role just to get the infrastructure right to start with.
Yeah, and just somebody who's lived in Switzerland but now lives in Germany but comes from the States. I got everything covered for you. What I did notice while I was here was, at least in Switzerland, there's two things going for it. It's a very pragmatic country, And also there's a country where they really, really need technologies like the quantum computing field, because there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies looking for small molecule designs. And I think that is where Switzerland personally can really shine.
And Switzerland, just to update you, yesterday we announced with the Swiss Army the collaboration on satellite connectivity, which is going to be the next roundtable. And CLSQ is actually securing with the post-quantum technology the WISeSat satellite. We have set it in orbit. And this is a clear example of how we can work with the government, with the military, with the industry in making Switzerland an example of where this industry should go. I can give you mine.
This is the one started.
So there is a huge opportunity to use Switzerland as a sandbox and test things that we will not be able to test in Europe or even in the United States. The United States is going to be, it has been announced this morning, right? I mean, America first. So who's going to be the second? Yeah. Okay. So I think any other questions? Maybe one question more, and then I'm going to wrap up. Yeah, there's a gentleman there.
Hi, great discussion, I really enjoyed this. If I remember correctly, two of the most fundamental problems with quantum computing is the error correction and also compiling. Unless you solve that, basically quantum computers will be a nice curiosity. So is there any update on where things are and when do you think it's to be solved?
I can comment on it if, even though I'm not from IBM. Actually, Google had an announcement about a month ago or so, and I don't think the chip itself was that impressive, but the fact that they have proven that surface code error correction does actually work, to me is significant, because prior to that, I had kind of assumed that the error rate would go up with the number of quantum bits, and I think Google has shown that that's no longer the case.
Yeah, we have as well.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so if there's no further question, I would like to thank the panel. This is an amazing discussion. We just continue every year. I think you to come back and back again. And, thank you as well. So we're going to be reconnecting fast because we have still 2 panels to go. One on the space technology, which is the next one. And so if the new panelists AI, and do in quantum. If you don't mind, so silently, so we can focus. It is essential also to understand the role of the space, right? The space has been always explained as the next frontier, and also obviously space is becoming geopolitical as well. So WISeKey created a company within WISeSat. This company has been collaborating with several space agencies, also with FOSA, with founders here, with Julian, in basically developing next generation satellites. You know, yesterday, this is a good way to start this panel, by the way, we announced that the Swiss Army is going to use those satellites to train military staff in the space division of the Swiss Army, so there's a major breakthrough, and also contribute to what we call building a Swiss constellation on satellite. We launched, with FOSA, we launched 14 satellites now. Just a few days ago with the SpaceX, we launched a new satellite, a new generation satellite that was a successful. Well, actually, it was very interesting that we launched successful on the day after Starship blew away. You know, so 24 hours later, we were lucky not to be on the second one. But it also shows the risk space brings a new, is the Wild Wide West there. Some companies are trying to monopolize the space. And there is a need, obviously, to have alternatives. In WISeKey history, we always like to push the envelope, and although we are much smaller than these players, we always like to develop alternatives, because we need alternatives, as was discussed in the previous roundtable on cybersecurity. We have the pleasure to have MIT head with us, MIT Lab. Thank you very much. So as I was saying, our vocation has been in the last 3 years to develop alternatives, and in this roundtable we have experts that they have their own experience in the space, and then they're collaborating with us. And we're going to open the panel maybe just by defining the current situation. Maybe I'm just going to give the floor to the youngest person we have in the panel, Julian, that has built a very successful startup in Spain with the name FOSA system. So, Julian, maybe starting with you, how can you give us a state of the situation now in the space, the position of Europe versus the United States, and where you see opportunities here?
Okay, fantastic. Just as a brief introduction, we're one of the partners of WISeSat, also we have been invested by WISeSat. So we are one of the partners working with WISeKey on many interesting projects, which I'm sure we'll cover today. Many interesting partners here on several things. And we are solving several problems. Several of these problems are being addressed either through connectivity, through security, through transactions, several projects which are being run in parallel. One of them is sovereignty, and is how we can have independent and sovereign access to satellite systems in Europe, which is a topic which is very important, very, very critical now, even more, and which is being brought up by the Trump administration, and which is being seen with the evolution of space as a whole. We've all seen in Ukraine the use of space in conflicts through communications, through satellite imagery. Satellites in space in general is becoming a more critical space to be in, no pun intended. And so it's critical for companies, but also for governments to be in space. And this is the problem which we're trying to address. The evolution or the options compared to Starlink for broadband communications, the options for IoT communications, for what we call now direct-to-cell communications, which are also being addressed by Starlink, but many other things, going through signals intelligence to cameras to communications. In the end, space is a privileged point of view. When you're in space, you can see everything from above. You have repeatable access to visualize the Earth from space, either for intelligence purposes, because you're going over someone else's country, or for having a communications or some other privileged sort of bird's eye view in space. And so over these past decades, there has been a privatization of space. Today we stand here with several private companies, academia that are involved in space, something which 20 years ago wasn't imaginable because space was not as accessible as it is today. Largely through private initiatives like SpaceX that have lowered the cost of launches and which have allowed us to launch satellites. Just a couple days ago, last week, we launched WISeSat into space. We launched 3 new satellites with SpaceX. It was a successful launch. There were CubeSats, little satellites about the size of a shoebox. Satellites that weigh 6 kilograms, they're very small, and they carry software-defined radios, carry cameras. They can do anything from analyze signals on the ground to communicating in 5G. So where we stand today is how we can provide these sovereign systems in Europe, how we can develop sovereign solutions to provide independent access to connectivity and really democratize connectivity is our objective worldwide. So I think it's a very general overview on what we're doing, but yeah, I'm sure we'll go more in depth now.
Thank you very much. Maybe with that introduction, maybe introduce the members of the panel, that you can introduce yourself and for the audience to know what are you representing in terms of company and what your activities are.
Let me start. Thank you, Carlos, for inviting me here. My name is Ashok Ranadive, basically a mechanical engineer with Masters in Nuclear Engineering and Business degree. Worked for the Indian Navy, retired as commander, and then worked for Google and a blockchain company where we collaborated a lot with WISeKey and WISeSat as well as a previous company. Right now, I'm a CEO of a sustainability climate tech startup called Carbon Minus. Yeah, and then that's my view of the world now. I'm looking at it from a sustainability lens all the time.
Thank you. Jan Donald. I'm Director of Telecommunication for the company Aerowag, so we are the Swiss technology partner for the armed forces, but also in general the Swiss security network. So we are a little bit midway between government and industry. Specifically, so I work on the telecommunication part, and as you mentioned, this is a field that's one of the main fields that is being reinvented, I would say, by new space. I have also some new colleagues here who know that focus is for the company more of parts such as intelligence and satellite and imagery intelligence and signal intelligence. So we have a bit both in the company.
Thank you very much. So I'm Didier Manzoni, I'm the Deputy CEO of Apple Technologies. I'm the representative of the upstream, because to have downstream, you need upstream. So we are the second largest space company in Switzerland, and we deliver, we supply to the large primes in Europe and in the USA, large systems for rockets, for satellites, also on-ground segment, and also operation at the European spaceport in French Guiana, where all the launchers are operating, the European launchers.
Good morning. I'm Murat Seyit-Nebesov. I'm the president of the Greater Caspian Association. And what we are doing is promotion and development of the Greater Caspian region. It's not only 5 littoral states of the Caspian Sea, it's a much wider and bigger region, starting from Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine on the west, till Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and other countries on the east. It's 10 million square kilometers and $8 trillion GDP, purchasing parity, and 640 million people there. And this region was traditionally under the Soviet Union. Main part of it was a part of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union really built a great space infrastructure during the decades, and for some time even winning the United States in this competition. And this infrastructure still remains there. Unfortunately, it's not properly managed and properly used. What we are trying to do, and one of the projects which we are cooperating with WISeKey, is a track and trace solution for containers in the remote areas, because our region is big and not everywhere we have GSM connections. That's why to track and trace containers, you need the only way is to do via satellite, to do it on the stable way. Thank you.
Hi everyone, delighted to join you. I'm David Newman, the director of the MIT Media Lab and the Apollo Program Professor of Astronautics. So a few hats from academia, a few hats from representation. 51% of the folks in the world are not represented, but I'm glad to jump up here. So we don't have a manel. And I serve in the Obama administration as NASA's deputy administrator. So when we get to government, because I have a government hat on as well, and Link. We established the public-private partnerships. You said space has got what, big billions of dollars for Elon to succeed, right? He's a great aerospace engineer. Gwen Shotwell, who's president of the company. So we're all in. We're all in for industry. The democratization of space is real. It's real. I love this is less than like a 1U. So, but it's open source. Design, develop, put a CubeSat up. We had an elementary school. About 10 years ago, design, develop, make a CubeSat and fly it. They're from, the DC area. Why? Because we can do it. And those kids are so excited. And guess what they flew as their payload? They flew a camera because they wanted to look down on Earth and they wanted to look down at their school. So when you think about it, please think about all of our kids and the next generation. It really is truly democratized. Every country can now build, design, fly something in space. It starts small. And then on the other end of the spectrum, my specialty is human spaceflight. So we would become interplanetary, we'll get people to the moon and Mars. It's hard, but that's why we do these things. And President Kennedy started that, and now 50 years later, we will get people back to the moon. It's for scientific exploration. We're going to Mars. That's for scientific discovery to look for the evidence of life, past life, which tells us about our humanity and where we come from. So I'm really glad to join all of you, and I am the biggest champion for privatization in the space industry and access for all. And guess what? It makes sense, and it actually makes money now. And educational, because we can bring the world with us. So one last thing in terms of the forum, a shout out here, because we've curated, and it really represents this panel well, so we've curated the forum, space security, I heard, education, I heard, policy and regulation, we could talk about that, exploration, the humanity of it all, and all around. There's 8 main areas that we talk about with the forum to, for information, intelligence, and just to kind of spread that and to cover basically all sectors. So your business folks, right, you need a space strategy. I'm sure you all have one. If you don't, you need one. It has to be on your top 3 list or you'll be behind.
This is actually an honor for us to have you with us. I have been working with MIT Media Lab from the time of Negroponte. When I was in the UN, I was the Chief Security Officer at that time, and we were doing this laptop child project in Brazil. So the fact that MIT Media Lab is always a forward thinker, and will be great to cooperate with you in democratizing the space, as you just mentioned.
Hello everyone, it's a pleasure as well to be here. I'm Carlos Moreno, I'm a VP in charge of corporate alliances and partnerships for WISeKey, working closely together with Carlos for the development of the division, the WISeKey division, which is really a promising division, started in satellite operations since 3 years now, but the acceleration is tremendous. We do have, as Carlos said, we launched already 17 satellites in orbit, and the latest is just last week. A new generation. It's not the one that is shown here. It's a 3, is bigger. It's bigger, and the future is brilliant for this division. We are deserving here IoT communication. This is our principal operation, and we do have huge plans for the future as well.
Thank you, Carlos.
Hi everyone, my name is Hossein Ranima. I am from the upcoming 51st state of the United States, still known as Canada. I have the opportunity to work with Deva at MIT Media Lab as a visiting professor and founder of a company called Flybits, and had the pleasure of working with Carlos and David over the past years. Until about a year ago, I knew very little of space until I met Deva and a lovely partner. And then after that, I became very interested in interplanetary physics. And my background is in AI, and started to read a lot about it, and now working on a framework at MIT Media Lab called Solar System Inspired Framework for Building AI Ecologies. So what that is that when you think about the advent of these large language models, foundation models, new models, there is a lot that we can learn from space. So if you think about your organization in the middle and think about different orbits, In the first orbit, you can use models that are very much based on your privacy preserved data. You're not sharing those with anyone. You control them, you encrypt them, because those are your new asset classes. On the second orbit, you can have models that are very fine-tuned for doing your business or performing activities, such as risk models, optimization models. And it's the third orbit that you have the very large language models. So instead of putting all the parameters and all the information in these very large models that many of them are closed, you can invest and innovate around how these planets, aka models, are talking to each other. So if this year you have 20 models, and then in a year you have 100, and then 500 after that, this ecology that we call it orbital AI can give you the ability to plug in these models and allow them to communicate with each other. Mathematical models, statistics models, large language models, instead of putting in one. So I'm honored that I'm on a space panel. I feel the person with the least amount of knowledge on the topic, but at least I was very much inspired by the physics of space and how it can help us to build new data and AI ecologies.
Thank you very much. I have a question which, you know, due to my previous role in the United Nations, I always consider is that how developing countries can really participate from space. You know, I mean, for the moment, the concentration is very much in the United States, obviously Russia, China, in some level Ariane sank 5 in Europe. But I was in India last week actually, and I was impressed with the Indian progress. Maybe you can give us some ideas on how you see India play a major role in decentralizing space, especially on the launching pad. And also, what are applications? I know that you're working a lot on carbon offsetting. Is any potential interaction between space transaction and carbon from your experience?
Thank you so much. So India has definitely made several strides in terms of the first and most important thing is proving that the satellite launch vehicles are consistently performing and without any challenges. So their record has been really good. So that's one important thing. Second, which is very critical for democratizing, is bringing down the cost. And I think these two things are very critical, and I think India has made several progress in that. So that's something that I definitely want to bring out. And I think it's opened up now for private participation as well. So private companies can access these satellite launch vehicles and to help put their satellites in the orbit where they want, and bringing down the cost has been helpful. In terms of overall sustainability or environmental perspective, I mean the low Earth orbit satellites play a very critical role. One, because of the low latency that they make available, and secondly, because observing, as somebody was on the panel was saying, that observing Earth and how it changes over a period of time is very critical to understand deforestation or reforestation efforts. There are carbon credit projects that are happening where you take a large piece of land and you go ahead with reforestation, but there is no tracking, and unless you have tracking, there is this worry about greenwashing and stuff like that. So if you want to really track how carbon credits are nature-based carbon credits are being tracked, this is very important. Also, climate challenges, right? If you have disasters, giving early warning with the disasters is very critical. I think the low Earth orbit satellites kind of play a very critical role in that. So I think overall in sustainability, understanding of how the emissions are changing, how Earth and the nature of forestation is changing, and tracking these projects is very critical, and I think that's important.
I have a question for Jan on the use of satellite. What are the industries you think in Switzerland or even outside Switzerland that will benefit first from this space revolution?
Well, I'll speak obviously from the defense industry because it's my perspective, right? But What I see is a tremendous reduction in prices in going to space. And the effect it has is that we have to consider space as a domain for operations, so in case of conflict where things will happen, and it means both that we need to have capabilities in space to defend ourselves, but also that we must be prepared that some vector of attacks will come from space. So I see their kind of trade-off. Now, where I really see a benefit, if we're talking telecommunications today, we see that it's significantly less expensive given the requirements of coverage, of resilience, to build up in space than it can be underground. It's reflected very well with the abonnements that Starlink is proposing. I don't remember, I think 35 francs for direct-to-say capabilities anywhere, anywhere in the United States now. I don't even think that the 50-second state is but we really see that it's cost efficient. So that's where industry has to profit, bring down the cost and develop capabilities.
Thank you very much. So maybe you can, on that line, Didier, because also relates to Switzerland, what is the ambitions of Switzerland as a country to be a player in this space? We are outside the United States. I mean, we don't have obviously any relation to Europe, or to the fact that we're European, but we are not subject to the same restriction or regulations. Is that something that you see as a positive thing to expand this industry in Switzerland?
To be honest, we are working very much with the European Union and with the European Space Agency. So, to respond to you, we have a strategy all over Switzerland, but of course afterwards we have broken down these strategy companies per company, also taking care of the different competencies that we have in Switzerland. Today we were discussing just before, to be honest, we could build a satellite on our own with all the competencies except one. We don't have propulsion system today in-house in Switzerland, but the rest we can build, and we have a different solution that we already tried out to buy propulsion in order to be able even to cope with this issue. Of course, it's very important for us not only to work with the European Union and with the European Space Agency, but it's quite an important factor because I'm convinced still today private space is private, becoming more and more private, but space first of all is an infrastructure and it is a public infrastructure. So we need also public investment, and even SpaceX took advantages of this at the beginning of the company. Now the Starlink abandoned, they get money, but still 70% of the launches from Falcon 9 are for DoD or for NASA. So, and then he has his own market with Starlink, of course. So it has to be a combination of private and public partnership, and I'm convinced we need both. Switzerland, with our good connections with Europe, but with USA also, we take advantage of that. Most of our companies have projects in the US or in Europe, in the commercial market, but also in the private, in the public market, on the launcher side, on the satellite side. So we are more or less everywhere in Switzerland. We have also very good academies. We have very strong partnership with different schools, with EPFL, with also high schools like in Yverdon and so on. So we have a very good network in order to cope with our problem in the industry. We propose masters, we propose PhD to the students. At APCO we have at the moment 4 masters in parallel. And the last point, very important, and I have to say, it was a booster the last 5 years. We have also our needs for the army. And we know with the changes we have today in the environment, it's crucial. And I have seen, I can tell you, the last 30 years it was, let's say, rather like that. And the move is exponential thanks to the boost that our army has given to this sector. Everybody now is very conscious to the top level of our army that space is an extremely important component. And when I speak about space, it's not only communication, but it's also intelligence. It is also to cope with threats and to make sure that we can anticipate, let's say, non-friendly movement in space. And we have invested in the last 5 years a lot of money in the army together with the industry. And we continue, and we have a plan, we have a clear strategy, which orbit we want to populate with which type of satellite. And WISeKey is one of the components.
Absolutely. As you know, we are working with the Army, and one of the interesting things, because bottom line of this is how do you finance, a constellation is a lot of money to be invested. And Switzerland is in a very good position because we acquired the F-35 fighters, from Lockheed Martin. So we have the offset capabilities that can be used to finance the infrastructure, and we're actually in the process of ensuring that this can be used for that purpose. Because somebody has to invest. I mean, we as a private company, we have put something together with FOSA, but obviously we cannot do the entire lift work on that. We need cooperation there.
I fully agree. That's one of the big problems with the space. Space is fantastic. I'm a space engineer for 40 years now, so it's clear it's my passion for it. But of course, it costs money. The infrastructure is extremely sustainable because it's difficult to attack somewhere when you are especially in high orbits. But of course, the investment you must put on the table at the beginning, and the time you get your return on investment is long. And you have to convince the people that they will get their return on investment, but it will not be about 3 years or 7 years, 5, 10 years.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
If I may, just an element so also to that, because I think we really see in the governments that there is a growing awareness of space in the political process, and we see that on the cantonal level. We still see that also at the state level with different initiatives last year. But we know how the Swiss political process is, and it takes time, and it's our role, I think, also to make them aware of what exists today, and say to everyone in the room here, be it industry, be it academia, that's a few years ago, a couple of years ago, when I was talking about space and satellite, people were basically telling me, stop with your Star Wars, right? Go back to what exists. And this shift is in progress, and I think we should encourage it.
But you see, when I spin out the semiconductor business from WISeKey, SEALCOIN, and I listed on the Nasdaq, I had the same reflection here in Switzerland. You want to succeed, nobody has done it. Now SEALCOIN is a $1 billion markup company, right? So that means that Switzerland is the #1 innovation country in the world. And universities like EPFL or EPZ are amazingly effective on creating innovation. But obviously we need the next ledger, the late stage funding and how to propel. And we could have 20, 30 unicorns in Switzerland overnight. So we are trying to achieve that, but this is something I agree with you that needs a more consensus-driven decision-making process. Yeah.
Something which is not known as on the Apollo 11 flight launch, the first instrument that was put on the moon was a Swiss instrument from the University of Bern, and Buzz Aldrin, he had on his, the astronauts, they had the instruction on the arm. The first instruction was take care not to fall down when you walk on the moon. Second one, deploy the solar array of the instrument from there.
So in this line of thinking, and Caspian region, I mean, you see space as a major economic booster for the region, and you are a major player in the region because you have huge infrastructure to transfer containers around the region. What is your usage of the space, and how you see how that could be even further expanding the potential economic of the Caspian region?
As we know, many countries of our region is the former Soviet Union republics. And in the Soviet Union time, everything was centralized. Everything was going through Russia, through Moscow. But the main space center was in Kazakhstan, which is Baikonur. And all what we know was done from Baikonur by Soviet Union. And this is still available, but what I would like to say that during, I don't know why, but during the pandemic time, there was a big boost on these independent countries to go to the space. And I just saw some statistics that even small countries like Kyrgyzstan, they're trying to do something, even Tajikistan thinking to do something, Azerbaijan already doing, Turkmenistan even sent almost a satellite for communication. And there is definitely a will for these small countries to develop the space and go to the space. How they will be competitive with the superpowers and with the European Space Agency, with the United States, with others, this is a big question. But at least this is the way for international cooperation. And with regard to the practical implementation, what could be done and what is being done, for example, it could be methane emission monitoring, which is, you can only do it from space, you cannot do it on the ground, it's impossible. And unfortunately, this is a big problem for the region, and for oil and gas producing countries like Turkmenistan, first of all, but also Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and the only way to fight with this is to understand what is going on. And for example, only methane emission of Turkmenistan, industrial methane emission only from the 2 gas fields is 5 billion cubic meter per annum. And 5 billion cubic meter not fit. If you will multiply by 30, 40 or 80, like equivalent to carbon dioxide, you are coming to the carbon dioxide emission of Great Britain equivalent. And we see here, just yesterday we had one discussion with one UN organization how to deal with this. And but first we need to know what is happening, what is the problem, and how to monitor. And the only solution in this space, as I told, now coming back to the track and trace solution for containers, our region is big, 10 million square kilometers, and GSM coverage, maybe we have like 20-30% of the territory. And remember, you did this presentation in the office, and then we saw the only main roads are covered by GSM. If you go a little bit 20 kilometers aside, you don't have any coverage. And if you want really to optimize movement of containers, trucks, could be trains also, you should use satellite connectivity. That is the only way. And I think there is a big future. The same applicable for Brazil, for example, because they also have Amazonian region where there is no any connection. We also can go to the East Asia. We also could go to other places in the world, but Greater Caspian region is the ancient Silk Road. At least this should be connected all the time. And we are working on this with WISeKey. We are very happy. Hope it will be great product, and which we can then multiply in all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I remember I was once invited to MIT Small Business School to present WISeKey, how I started the company as an entrepreneur. And I was surprised at the end of the meeting, everybody was coming after me to learn how to create a startup. I mean, that's very different from Europe. When you see sometimes university, you ask the same question, the kids are saying, oh, I want to join a bank or a big multinational or insurance company. So where's the miracle to convert this energy of young students into the willingness to create startups and break through? You have the secret, and we have to learn in Europe how to do that.
We were glad to share. Yeah, I think if we take a look at the MIT startups, I think we'd be the 10th or 11th largest GNP of the world. So we're really proud of that. So you have to open the doors. The students are amazing, and again, just make sure to say yes. Never say no to their dreams. Just say yes, and then it's us to mentor them. We're mentoring, we're coaching, and say yes, that's possible. And then crazy ideas, especially, or in the media, the moonshots. Especially say yes to those, and then say yes, but you still have to pay attention to the physics. You have to do this. So for starters, because the enthusiasm is there, and also be real with them. 9 out of 10 are going to fail. We have hundreds and hundreds of space startups. We're the few successful ones here for satellites. So and then the training and the education. So entrepreneurship. It's just the innovation ecosystem, right? It's a system. We're systems thinkers, complex systems, and it's not one thing. But so we just try to take it from an educational perspective, learn from any faculty member here. Knows your students are smarter than you. So you have to listen to them, and you have to try to empower them, take their good ideas, and always empower them. Say yes. I want to also just real quickly talk about international cooperation. Critically important. So I've worked in Kazakhstan very well, especially Baikonur. Because they've flown a lot of missions out of there, trained a lot of astronauts there. It's incredibly important, and specifically we want to give a shout out to Ukrainian technology development. So you might not know, on every mission going up to the International Space Station, I think it's the best model yet for international. 100 countries have flown science and experiments to space. Everyone wants to get in space. So it's 5 major partners, but what you might not know right now, commercial, this is more of opening up the business model, being disruptive. So delivering cargo to a space station, right? Astronauts can't stay there, they come through science. Each mission, each crew member, 6 crew members, right? They do 250 scientific experiments. So when you see the cargo going out to replenish, and you see now Grumman, formerly Orbital Sciences, right? It's Ukrainian technology on every single launch. So the Ukrainian Space Agency, Ukrainian technology is very advanced, and we're partnering, we're all in, right? It's global space cooperation. I've been soft diplomacy, I believe in, personally. So for 30 years, 3 decades, I'm working with professional Soviet cosmonauts as well. Because in space, you look down on one planet, and we got to get this right. Humanity. You don't look at nation states, you don't look at high-level rhetoric. What you look at is we want secure planet, save this planet for everyone. So it really, I think space, international cooperation, also shout out to India. The best technology is going to find our NISAR. If you want dual aperture synthetic radar, satellites, India's been in the satellite business for remote sensing for quite some time. Very advanced, now very advanced launch. So just have to look around and say, yeah, who am I going to partner with? That's it. That's good. Who am I going to partner with? Because there's so many opportunities. And I propose that if we do it together, it'll be much, much better,
Beautiful, and actually, we wrote the book Humanity at the Crossroad. It's the intersection between quantum computer space, identity management. Yesterday we announced with our house, which is a very big movement, on 1 billion identities to be distributed by WISeKey. And I fully agree with your vision for the space. We don't have countries, right? It's humanity, and that will change obviously the way the internet architecture will be designed for the future, right? Because it will be human-centric, and that will protect humans of the 4th industrial revolution. So it's a massive, and that's the idea here. It is cooperating. We are actually with FOSA and Hedera, which is sitting there, the gentleman representing Hashgraph, one of the largest blockchains in Switzerland. We're doing a proof of concept where we launched a satellite already with the SpaceX just a few days ago. Now we are trying to send a crypto token from the space all the way down to Earth through an antenna that we are installing in Switzerland, so that will deactivate an IoT device. So the IoT device has, I don't know if Bernard is there, but Bernard showed this morning the post-quantum crypto device, and it's going to be miniaturized, so it's inserted in that type of satellites. And we're going to be able to exchange tokens from space. Just to give you an idea, the type of moonshot projects that we are working together, they're complicated because the size of the message is too big to be transferred. The injection of the keys needs to be done in advance. So it's extraordinarily complex, but with the help of experts from all sorts of sectors, we are solving amazing problems already.
And a really short answer to your very first question you asked me, how do we have this entrepreneurial, ecosystem at MIT and startups? Just give us the hardest questions.
Exactly.
Just give us the hardest questions that they can't solve. Boom.
Exactly.
I'll give you 100. I'll give you 100. Make me crazy, but I'll give you 100 responses.
And if you fail,
problems.
it's not a problem. With the institution, and if you fail, you are being you're going to be crucified in the Esplanade.
I'll give a failure word at NASA. Feel smart.
We need to teach people not to blame people failing on innovation, because that discourages a lot of people. Okay, so yeah, go ahead, please tell us.
I have a comment on that because I think the story of how we launched our first satellite and how we ended up partnering with WISeKey is very interesting. How we came to create this, because now we're an established company. We partnered with WISeKey. We've already launched 20 satellites into space, and we're one of the companies in Europe that has launched the most satellites. The project actually started out online on a forum called Reddit. You probably all know Reddit. And I opened up a thread that said, who wants to launch a satellite into space? I'm 15 years old. I have a budget of 1,000 euros. Who wants to launch a satellite into space? And we got together a bunch of students and we made a pocket cube, a satellite that's less than 250 grams. Put it together, we launched it into space with an Electron Rocket Labs. It worked, we received IoT packets, and then that transitioned into FOSSA as a company today and what we do. So it really goes to show how much space has been democratized and how much even an individual nowadays can get into space and access, and how the costs are going down. We're talking about how does space infrastructure affect emerging economies. It is the solution to many of the problems that they have, the lack of infrastructure that they have, where satellites shine even more. So yeah, just wanted to put that little sort of success case out there of WISeKey and FOSSA and how that started off.
Now, kudos to...
Just before you go, just to add on that, you know, there's another interesting company which is not here today with us in Spain with the name PLD Space, which is launching actually Miura 5, which is they already have a prototype launch. And this is going to be the first private launcher company in Europe, and we are working with them as well. And this is so exciting, you know, because suddenly they realized that Ariane 5 was spending so much money, it's still not profitable, it's still very clumsy, very slow. And these are now young people raising money to go to space. So I think the democratization of space is really up now.
Yeah, kudos to Julian to kind of live this dream and come to this space. About 2 years back, Carlos, if you remember, when I was working for a blockchain company, we presented the first track and trace solution with WISeKey and FOSSA, and the whole concept was presented at Financial Times London conference. I just remember that. Now that we have come, we are working with our data. Absolutely.
Yeah, I still remember that. And at that time, investors, they didn't know that this was possible actually. So investor community needs to be aware that this exists now. Go ahead.
I think one thing that is coming out of this panel is how cross-disciplinary this space research can be. We are announcing tomorrow as part of Media Lab a program called SAPIEN, like it's SAPIEN with AI, like human and AI are collaborating. And the foundation of that is to build key technologies, and we give it to different verticals and industries and let them to build competitive advantage with that. And we had 2 undergraduate students interested in space last semester. They built something on a capability that we call perspective-aware AI. Like imagine every single one of us will be represented by a human AI agent. And they mapped the International Space Station, and their view was that as leisure space travel is becoming more pervasive, people with different cultures will need to learn in advance how they can kind of coexist in such a difficult and confined space. And it was fascinating for me to watch because not really knowing much about the physics up there, these folks applied our technologies, used graphs, and now you can go and look at the space station through the lens of others, from a cultural point of view, from a preferential point of view. And their view is that if they build such simulation capabilities, the experience up there will be much more pleasant or more tolerable. So one thing that you're referring to is this cross-disciplinary imperative of how AI, data, decentralization coming together, but the human is in the center, which is a great anchor point on your book.
Absolutely. And the bottom line as well is making money out of space, not only spend money. So Carlos, what are the, from your experience working on WISeKey, what are your areas that you think is early, low-hanging fruit in revenue generation from space?
Sure. I'm going to talk about use cases, but maybe as we have been talking about democratizing the space, I just want to put some figures on top of it. Just the cost of a satellite like the one that, bigger than this one, the latest that we launched last week, is about 500K. So it's nothing in comparison to what was the cost before.
That was $20 million 3 years ago, right?
Exactly. And concerning the use case, there are multiple. We signed this year the deployment of WISE Container project, which is one of the product line from WISeSat, in order to track and trace counters. It's not a matter of only tracing the geolocalization of the container, but it's more intelligent than this. We are looking for what is happening with the container at the moment, because we are sensorizing the container in order to track what is the temperature, what is the humidity, if the door of the container has been open or not. And those information are pretty important for the companies, the logistic companies, but not only, as well for the insurance. You know that when something is happening with a container, they want to know where it happened, if there was a shock or something, and something has been broken in the container. With the sensorization, we are able to let them know at what time, what moment, which location. And we are implementing, as I said, the first client in Spain. It would be in production, I believe, end of this quarter. This would be the first one. We are working as well in a POC, not tracking container, but in logistic of trucks. Is as well a derivation from the value proposition. Beside of the contract with the army and sensorizing the IoT from the battlefield, all the objects and the assets that the army has on the field. Those are as well use case very important that we are working together as already with the actors that are present here. And well, so it's indefined. The number of use cases that we can use with this technology is really terrible. And we are just at the beginning.
And plus, in an interesting area, which is smart agro. Spain is a major smart agro country now. Basically, all the vegetable production in Europe is done in Spain, and they have issues with water. So they are putting sensors that they go into detecting the humidity level of the earth at the land, and they send that information to the satellite to take decisions whether they have to put water or not. So they are amazing. Even the latest use case was finding a parking. The satellite will tell you where to park your car, you know. So there's going to be endless use cases where it's going to increment the, that would be a handy one, right? Especially that was a very handy way to use it. You told me just before the next thing you're doing with the sensor that sends, can you explain that? Because this is very cool. This is coming, as maybe again, another world first, but this is a very cool use.
Yes, so one of the topics that is being worked on extensively is direct to cell. And this is sort of the latest boom in space. We have SpaceX that's rolling out their direct to cell partnerships, even in Switzerland with Salt. They have partnership. They rolled out service in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago. Direct to cell is sort of the new hype baby in space. And so one of the topics that we are working on is how we can use our satellites, integrate new technologies like 5G for direct cell communications. And up until now in WISeSat, we have been focusing primarily on the IoT, the low-hanging fruit of very low data rate and very low latency, but we are starting to explore the new applications of whipping out your mobile phone and sending a text message, whether it's through a hardware device connected to the mobile phone or directly with it. Obviously, difficult to get on the scale of SpaceX, that has huge, great high gain antennas, or Space Mobile, which has great high gain antennas, but there are many other things that can be done. I think there's more people on the panel that can speak about this, but this is a feature that's coming and at a very affordable cost. We're speaking, you just mentioned it before, constellations, full 80 satellite constellations can cost what, like 80 million?
Yeah.
40 million?
Yeah.
So costs are really being driven down. Other topic, sovereignty, I said at the beginning. I do agree with the vision that you have of globalization and partnerships. I think it's the vision we need to strive as humanity. But the reality is the world's going against that. And there is now a focus on sovereignty. Everyone wants to have their own network. Look at Iris Squared. Europe wants to have their own network. Spain wants to have their own network. The Atlantic Constellation. US wants to have their own network. I think, unfortunately, that's where the tendency is going. And new space, nanosatellites, have an alternative to do that in a sustainable way, launching at low Earth orbits, the re-enter, not being irresponsible about it. But I think new space and nanosatellites have a way of providing these independent sovereign infrastructure, a little bit how people have on-prem servers, or you can have your shared infrastructure with a cloud provider.
But we actually have to recognize, I was in Paris invited by Macron to the Versailles Choose France, and I had the opportunity to meet Elon Musk and have a talk to him, and I told him, thank you very much for letting us building our satellite with your rockets. I was expecting him to tell me, oh no, you're not going to be able to do that anymore because you are competing against me. But actually not. He thinks that this is the way to go. Open it to companies so they basically, SpaceX becomes a transport, not just a monopoly. So I think that has allowed us to reduce the cost. And that vision is now being shared by other launchers. So any question to the panel that you would like to, we only have a few minutes, so two, 3 questions on any of those subjects. Don't be shy, the space is curiosity for all of us. Yeah, Andre over here.
Thanks for the opportunity. This to me is fascinating, and I think for those of us that grew up in the 80s, how exciting that, you know, regular people could put up satellites. But one thing I want to know is, if this is going to increase a lot, how are we going to deal with the air traffic control issues associated with the high volume of satellites in space that might ultimately happen? Thank you so much.
It's a complicated issue, of course. You have heard that there are many, let's say, projects which are going on everywhere on Earth in different continents in order first, because there are many steps also in the regulation. We have to make sure, first of all, because you speak about simply having too much traffic, but it's not the only problem. We have also problems with the frequencies. How do I calculate the frequencies? The fact that it becomes a real mess in order to be able to communicate, because you don't have really the access to the frequencies that you would need for a given orbit. So this is the first problem we have to tackle. But there are institutes working on that. There are organizations, kind of regulation first. Then we have the physical problem to have too many satellites everywhere. What do we do? How do we do? How they behave in orbit? Because the problem, all the different orbits work together, and all the different technologies, nanosats, gigasats, very large sats, they're all in orbit, and they have to live together. The problem is that the lower you are, unfortunately it's physics, you have gravity, brings you down. Okay? And when it brings you down where others are turning. So you have to make sure that there is no impact, because if there is an impact, then you pollute the entire orbit, and then it's end of the story. So we have means for that. We are tracking all the satellites. We know exactly where they are. We put abacus. We make sure that when we put a satellite in orbit somewhere, there is no risk for the others around. Then we are starting to have means in order to de-orbit the satellites. So normally, if you have signed a convention, you as a satellite provider, you must make sure that you can de-orbit your satellite. As a rocket provider like Ariane 6, which is now in the massive production for Europe, it means 10 or 12 rockets per year, which is a lot for Europe. We are de-orbiting the second stage in order to make sure that we don't put it in a risk, at risk for the others. So we take care of that. Then you heard about the Swiss project ClearSpace, which has now turned in a different consortium. The idea is also to take this satellite, which cannot de-orbit themselves, somewhere in another orbit or bring them down. So there are means for that.
Quickly, I can, yeah. So space sustainability. So this is a real issue, and so for low Earth orbit, low Earth orbit right now, with the SS is getting crowded. It's very crowded and responsibility. So there is from performing a space sustainability rating. If we give people, it's not legal, but it's not by law. There's a lot of work to do in this. Other orbits are not crowded yet, but you have to plan ahead. You have to think about ahead and be responsible. So you have to. It doesn't matter if you're industry or if you're a private, citizen or nation. You have to register the launch, and so everyone has. You have to cut margins a little bit. You have to have a little bit of propulsion to be able to deorbit. But this works for all small sats. When we're talking about big things like the International Space Station, we're going to deorbit it. It's going to needs to deorbit, where there's not people. But small satellites can be deorbited. But we thank you for the question, because and we need to have agree on this. The frequencies going to get complicated. I think globally, and come on world, we have to agree we will not do anti-satellite maneuvers, no ASATs, because that's what's caused the tens of thousands of shrapnel, if you will, in the Earth orbit. So there's only a few nations that have done that, and I think we need go more. Because when you do something like that, you're really messing up the orbits, and that's more of a militaristic play. But I think we need world agreement on that, not to do that.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to this, you mentioned a little bit about that. Related to this, from sustainability perspective, is the space debris, and how do we really take care of that? Because it's more than 10 centimeters, all objects are being tracked and everything, but you have to be very careful about, because the spread is enormous, the number of objects are too many, tracking all of them is not easy, it's being done. Also, as they re-enter the orbit, because they're close to the Earth and they're pulled by gravity, how do we really manage that so that they don't interfere with the air traffic, as well as other satellites and other launches that are happening. These are critical problems, and from a sustainability perspective, it's very important to manage them in an effective and sustainable way.
Okay, I'm gonna have to, yeah, okay, maybe a short question.
Hello, my name is Marina Gracia. I was a researcher in MIT Space System Lab on satellite debris removal. So I'm quite aware of that scene. My question would be that we are all talking that there should be a common purpose and direction on this, but to your knowledge, are these discussions already started and happening? And what is being discussed?
It's already done. The FCC put a 5-year limitation about a year or two ago on all satellites being launched under an FCC license or on US soil. Here, it's actually in Europe where we don't have the regulation. There's a recommendation, a 25-year recommendation. After 25 years, you need to re-enter passively. In the States, it's 5 years now, if it's a US spacecraft. So after the satellite has finished its operations, or if it fails at some point, it has 5 years to re-enter and disintegrate. So we talk about space sustainability in LEO. If we comply with these regulations, I think we are safe. Anything that happens will clean itself up in 5 years, as long as we don't do any ASATs tests. Russia doesn't do it anymore, China, US doesn't do it anymore. We don't have that. And we comply with the 5-year rules for re-entry, and also the fact that the objects, either they re-enter entirely and they burn up totally in the atmosphere, which is something we need to comply with because we don't have active control, we don't have propulsion, or you have propulsion in such a way that you can re-enter the Pacific Ocean. I think we have done progress as a society in the debris. I think there's still work to be done, but we don't need to be, as worried and terrified about this. I think it's a little bit like last panel. Space debris post-quantum, where they're going to break our encryption tomorrow. Yes, it's happening, but there's already progress being done.
Absolutely. So I will have to wrap up the panel because we have another one to go. And by the way, I'm going to inform you that the next panel, you're going to have also lunch. So it's going to be a bit of disruption because they're going to serve you lunch at the same time that we're going to be conducting the panel. But I will just thank first all the panelists. I think this is going to be a meeting that will be remembered a few years. I've been in Davos for 20 years, and what happens in Davos is that in 2 years' time, maybe it's going to be space, the subject of Davos, as you know very well. Every year we have a theme, and AI has been for 2 years. I'm sure quantum is next year, and maybe the year after is going to be space. So it would be great that we continue discussing this that we established cooperation. At the end of the day, is actually humanity-centric approach. We want to give an option to humanity for the future, and space is going to be that option. So maybe just give a hand to the panel. I'm thanking them for their support.
A recap of the day, because all these panels have a relation between themselves. And the relation is sometimes people ask me, but what WISeKey does? WISeKey does so many things. But actually, what it does is very advanced problem-solving projects that once you solve, you can become a company, and then you can bring the company to the NASDAQ and become a $1 billion company. So that's what we do, right? Sometimes it's difficult to understand because depending on the perspective you are looking into this, but when you put things together, they make a lot of sense. So this morning we discussed about the, excuse me, that table if you don't mind, attention please. So this morning we discussed about quantum, we have an amazing panel with leading companies like IBM and others. And we're now showing the first post-quantum chip that SEALCOIN has developed. But this is a breakthrough because while quantum is going to become, from the IBM position, faster than what we thought. Last week, the CEO of NVIDIA said it would be 50 years, but now IBM is saying that's going to be much faster. Therefore, you need an alternative. This is like, this is equivalent to a virus coming, and you need to develop the vaccine before the virus is there. So we discussed this morning, quantum technology. Then we move into a second roundtable, which was a space roundtable. And that roundtable covered with different key players in the space, how space could become part of the internet infrastructure by using satellites. And it is another area of interest of, excuse me, at that table, if you don't mind, we have, if you don't mind, that table, please, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but if you don't mind to be silent.
The quietest table will get the prize of the
Exactly. If you know, we send to the space. So the second table, as I say, was focused on the space technology and how space and particularly satellites could contribute to creating interoperability between the space and IoT objects and people and communication, with amazing breakthrough because 2 weeks ago we launched with the SpaceX one new generation satellite, which is going to be expanded during the year. And this roundtable is a very interesting roundtable because basically our vision is that the entire world is going to be tokenized. There is a lot of frictions in Web 2.0 multinationals, and they made a lot of money on Web 2.0 by abusing on identity, on privacy, on data, with a new vision, which is Web 3.0, which basically solves a lot of the problems data and ownership brings to the equation. And again, as it is always our example, we launched yesterday with Hedera Hashgraph a token with the name SEALCOIN, which is a close cooperation between WISeKey and Hashgraph. Actually, we created a joint venture company with the name SEALCOIN, sorry. And SEALCOIN is a token that basically will allow machines to pay each other. So the vision is that in few years, machines are going to be transacting themselves without the need to clear in a bank or a financial institution. So that's a breakthrough because you are disintermediating the financial sector by letting machines to pay each other, and not only pay each other peer-to-peer, but also through the space using the satellites. And as the head of MIT Media Lab say, when you are in the space, you don't have countries, you have humanity, and therefore your reach is global. So we're going to be debating that. We have experts on tokenization. We have with us Andrew from the Hashgraph Hedera, which will give us the vision. We have Daniel, which sits on the board of CLSQ, an old friend. He used to be at the World Economic Forum. He was a major player here in the intellectual agenda. And we have Maripina, obviously, also sitting on my board, but an expert in cryptocurrencies and Web 2.3. We have Jonathan, which is now leading the SEALCOIN project, and he will give you a good view. And we have Philippe, which is also a member of our board. And Philippe, it's a person that has interviewed who's who in the world personally, and also has been promoting Switzerland as a good place to create companies and create wealth through the technology revolution. So I will just maybe just to warm up the panel, to start with you, framing a bit, Jonathan, SEALCOIN, and maybe also giving an overall view about the digital economy, Web 3.0. What is it for the audience here?
Thank you, Carlos. So my name is Jonathan Yamas. I'm the VP of Decentralized Strategy for the group and leading the SEALCOIN project. We've heard a lot of interesting things since this morning, and the idea is that we bring them together to add even greater value when they are mixed together. And I will take the first few components. We started with Bernard showing us a microcontroller, which is concretely inside of our day-to-day devices in the IoT landscape, and securing this hardware. Okay? And we leverage, we say, how are we going to leverage the security at the hardware level through the secure element? And obviously, you've understood that they're already post-quantum ready, which means that the whole industry and the whole ecosystem that we're building around IoT is going to be ready for this next step. Then, Carlos also mentioned one important ingredient and element, which is PKI, public key infrastructure, which is the opportunity and the component that enables to issue certificates. Say differently, so this certificate can be identities or attributes for identities, and that can actually be fit for an individual, an organization, or a device. And once you put this information, this piece of information inside the secure element, not only you have the identity of the object which is secure, but also, and this is the third element that we're bringing to the table now, is DLT, blockchain and decentralized ecosystem. What we want to achieve is the proof of ownership from the owner of the device to the device itself. And this is how we're going to hook things together to enable exactly what Carlos just mentioned. Why do we bring those elements together? It's not just to have a very complex environment. It has to be as simple as possible for the users in the end. What we want to bring together is this opportunity to inject inside each of our IoT devices, which are fully distributed across the globe already, the opportunity not only to communicate, and satellite is going to help for that, of course. We want them to be able to transact together. And this opens up a lot of use cases which do not exist yet. I will give you, maybe to frame the conversation, 3 simple examples of what we're going to be able to achieve with this ecosystem. The first one is around energy trading. Think of a solar panel that we have this small device to secure the solar panel, and think about electric vehicle and your day-to-day car of today. Okay? What if I can actually call up a solar panel across the town and charge up my car without having any intermediaries into the ecosystem? And my car will pay actually the solar panel of the owner of the solar panel seamlessly and fully secure without any intermediaries from an operational point of view, but also from a financial point of view. So that's the first use case. The second use case is this solar panel, of course, can generate services like energy, but will generate also a lot of data. What if this solar panel can also, the owner of the solar panel, can sell the data to the weather forecast company, rather than having the weather forecast company having to deploy their own IoT devices? They can just purchase it from us. We all have sensors in our home to capture this critical data, and we can all start generating revenue through this data exchange. And the last point is, because we create an ecosystem where each of these devices is going to be autonomous, what about device as a service? Let's give you a very simple example. If I'm a manufacturer of devices, instead of selling devices, why don't I just sell services and I manage my own devices? I don't need to sell equipment anymore, I'm just selling services. And we've seen in Switzerland, actually in Liechtenstein, big corporates doing that already with Hitachi, the drilling company, stopping to sell the devices and just selling services for construction sites where you just consume the service you need, which is brilliant. You don't need to take care about the device itself, and we are enabling all of that to happen in a very sensible and secure way. So this is maybe just to frame the conversation, and then we can deep dive into all of these topics.
Very good. And in that line, maybe we can go sector by sector. Maybe decentralized finance is a major sector that you have been covering, Maria. What is your views on that?
Well, it's amazing. As here, Jonathan mentioned, one of the use cases is on solar panels. And one of the problems on green energy, particularly with trading also carbon footprints, what happens is that it's trust. It's trust that the asset really exists. And in this case, this transaction will be able to be done automatically. You can rig the solar panel depending on the smart contract. Also, I want to mention the component example that Jonathan mentioned about electric cars and solar panel and solar energy. Imagine an autonomous vehicle that wants to charge. The autonomous vehicle will have the smart contract and will interact directly with the machine to be able to recharge. That is where the SEALCOIN comes. And what is very, very disruption on this is that the last, I would say, more than 5 years, the main financial technological companies such as Visa and MasterCard, they have been mainly focused on seeing how they could, a user could pay inside an electric car, but these are much lower than that. So it's amazing. It has a huge use case. Also, another example has to do with something you already mentioned that has to do with smart farming. Because imagine, the IoT that will detect the level of the soil. And it will be able also to detect if there's any kind of soil that needs to be, with any mineral or more water. Then it can directly interact, for instance, with a drone that can provide that. And again, that is what the kind of places where SEALCOIN comes in. So it's it includes so much trust in the process, and of course the fact of decentralized this decision makes everything much more efficient and faster for users.
Absolutely, and I think the big opportunity here is decentralized finance, is the fact that you're basically reducing the need of intermediaries, right? And that basically reduces the cost of the transaction and expands the...
And so very, very cool. That's something that we don't have nowadays. Also in the solar panel energy, not all the microgrids have closing technology. So this also helps. Our purchase agreement, carbon tokens for reducing the carbon footprints of large companies, and their trust and decentralization have an amazing role. And not just the coin, also all the other technologies that WISeKey is working on, IoT combined with space technology to audit that the farmer is taking care of the soil as was committed. And these kind of things, human being, it's kind of something that's not really happening, but we're wrong. Imagine that 2 years ago, Microsoft already bought carbon, used carbon that was supervised with drones and measured with IoT. Imagine now with a token in between. It's amazing.
So connecting on trust, because the subject of trust and Web 3.0 is a dominant issue, right? I mean, everybody talks about Web 3.0 replacing Web 2.0 hierarchical trust structure to a decentralized structure. The panels, obviously, we always want to see the Swiss position of this, and last panel we discuss why satellites are a good asset for Switzerland and why cybersecurity is being promoted in the country. But Philippe, you have been in charge of bringing multinationals to Switzerland. What is the Swiss miracle on tokenization in Zug, and what do you think has been the good decisions they were taking in order to create an ecosystem like Crypto Valley, Zug, and things like that?
Maybe let me start with two anecdotes. Before I was in the board of a technology company, and we raised about 1 million, mostly to contact in Davos. And then we thought of the next step. And we thought maybe we should do ICO for the next step. So I talked to, it was 8 years ago, I talked to our bank, Credit Suisse, and I asked them, okay, if we need to open a special bank account, are you sure you're going to keep the Bitcoin? And then after some time they asked me, what do you mean by blockchain? What do you mean by ICO? What do you mean? Okay, so this was maybe 8 years ago. Then I noticed that there were a lot of foundations in Switzerland, starting with Ethereum Foundation. On foundation in Switzerland, they are regulated by the federal government or by the government, usually federal government. So I thought I went to see the federal government, and I asked them, I don't understand what is the logic of having a foundation for Ethereum. Can you explain to me why do you accept it? And they told me, you know, we had this young guy, Vitalik Buterin, he came to visit us with a lawyer from LME. And to tell you the truth, to be very frank, we understood nothing. We understood nothing. We really tried, but we understood nothing, and we thought maybe we should approve this foundation because we are maybe going to miss something important. But this was a little bit the history. In the meantime, the FINMA, which is the supervisory authority, I think they made a very sincere and good job of listening to people, talking to the industry, defining together regulation, not too much, but sufficient to create trust. And now we have in Switzerland a lot of players, important players. We have a bank like Amina, like Signal. We have companies like Bitcoin Swiss. We have, of course, SEALCOIN. We have a big event. We have the Crypto Valley Association. In Switzerland, the cantons are competing strongly among each other. So we have different pockets. We have Zug, we have Geneva, we have Neuchâtel. On Zug, in my view, did something extremely good, which is rare from a Swiss canton, or canton is a state. They launched the idea of that you can pay your taxes in Bitcoin. Actually, it was not exactly correct. Yes, you could pay in Bitcoin, but they would not keep the Bitcoin because it was too state money, it's too dangerous. So they immediately converted in Swiss francs. But still, in terms of marketing, they got a worldwide coverage of Switzerland being the epicenter of the new technology of blockchain, and I think it was an extremely positive marketing action.
Thank you very much, absolutely. And I think this is a miracle of Zug, right? And many others, cantons which are replicating that. So Andrew and I, we are good buddies. We met each other just 2 years ago, and we immediately connected brains, peer-to-peer without the need of a chip, connected. And obviously he's surrounded an amazing team at Hashgraph Hedera. So maybe talking about Hedera, because there is an amazing success story in Switzerland, Hashgraph. And they have a very, by the way, I recommend you guys to visit their Web 3.0 event here during Davos, where they are amazingly projecting all sort of partnerships and technology participation. But maybe, can you walk through how everything started? I have actually a very good meeting with one of your founders, Dr. Lehman, and connected immediately as well. I mean, what he explained me, the way this is actually very similar. I come from a more vertical trust model from the UN and all that, but it's merging at this point in Web 3.0. But maybe walk us through the evolution of that company and how that company has become one of the essential players in the blockchain economy.
Well, excuse me, I'm recovering. Carlos, thank you so much for this great event. opportunity. First off, it's important for people to realize as wonderful as Hedera is and the Hedera DLT is, it is leaders like Carlos, like Jonathan, who create the technology that uses Hedera. Blockchains, after all, are just a database, but if people don't create innovative solutions using them, then the value that they present is not able to be realized for the regular person. Now, I'm probably one of the worst people to talk about the origins of Hedera because my background is in quantitative finance, and so much of Web3 sometimes includes things like Bored Ape, meme coins, fascinating valuations, most of the things I don't believe in. But one of the things I definitely do believe in is SEALCOIN. And I'll tell you why. My background, my mother and father are from a country called Ghana, West Africa. They live in Canada, they're both physicians, they spent their lives practicing there. But as they retired, they like to spend more time in Ghana. And so when they leave, they often say, you know, Andrew, actually Poku, which is my first name, but they'll say, Poku, is there some way we can reduce our energy spend in Canada? Because if anybody knows self-made immigrants, they're very careful with their money. And I look, because they can reduce internet usage, they can shut off cell phones. But when it comes to power, we're still using early 19th century technology. And it's fascinating to me that nobody's complained about this. But the funny thing is, if you do travel to a country like Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, India, you realize that their consumption of power follows an entirely different model. I mean, mobile money started in Kenya. Why? Because the banking systems don't work in places where you have a lot of informal income. And that's largely due to the problem that Maria pointed out of trust. So here we have a situation where in poor countries, they can afford to leave their house and have power running, you know, the lights on. Like I used to get smacked in the head by my parents if I would leave the lights on in my bedroom or bathroom. So they actually have credit systems where they can pay per use for home electricity. It's not always on. But the funny thing is we don't really have a technological solution that can facilitate this. That would allow my parents in Ghana to access the internet and throttle down the usage of their home's energy in Canada. That is until Jonathan and Carlos decided to create SEALCOIN. This is the power of the technology they've created. That sometimes in beautiful Switzerland where everything works, I love this country, I'm living in Pfaffenhofen between here and Malaga. But sometimes we forget that a proper 98% of the world's population are still living in places with significant problems. And it's entrepreneurs like this that build technology like SEALCOIN that solve these problems that we might not otherwise realize exist. I'm going to leave that with you and allow us to continue, but you better believe there's more to say on this topic.
Absolutely, and although I think maybe I know more about it than everybody.
That is true.
But one of the things which I totally connected with Dr. Lehman, the founder, is about the need of tokenizing everything. And now we're moving into a society where identities are going to be tokenized and that will be decentralized. The control of silos that companies like Web 2.0 companies that have made their business model by just data mining identities do not belong to them, belong to the people. This is something that when I was in the UN already, that was 30 years ago, I was pushing the UN to please, let's develop a standard where people should be owners of their own identity and not the platform or the government or the bank or whoever owns that identity. And it was impossible because we didn't have the technology. We have the vision, we didn't know how to do it, but we didn't have the technology. So when you find a platform like yours that has been equipped with the right technology to provide decentralization at the identity level layer, means that you can put identities on ledger and then verify that identity from anywhere without the need to pay anyone the service of storing that identity into silos is a breakthrough. And it's a breakthrough for 8 billion people that they are on Earth, but it's even bigger when you translate that into objects. Objects, we're talking about trillions of objects to be connected. So trillions of identities that needs to be verified every second. So the model we have with there is very simple. Let's say we send a satellite to space. The satellite has to detect a chip, which is on a connected card. Before the transaction of the SEALCOIN is established, they go to the Hedera ledger. Hedera has stored that identity on the ledger, and Hedera says, yes, this is a trusted object, you can go ahead and pay. So this is disruption. I mean, this is a total disruption, right? Because that means that you can create imagine the capital intensity of trading trillion devices between themselves. I mean, that is unheard of, unseen of. So that's the potential of the project, right? And that project has been encapsulated now into SEALCOIN AG, which is a joint venture company between WISeKey and Hedera. So I just wanted to position that because this is actually a very serious development which has the potential to transform the digital economy. And the satellite, since we launched the satellite, I was surprised of the reaction in Twitter of the Hedera community and said, wow, I mean, now Hedera is on the space. Right? And that was actually, we captured their imagination to see, wow, imagine, this is exactly what the MIT lady said, is going to be the head of MIT Media Lab. From the space, you don't have countries. From the space, you only have humanity, you know.
You also captured a 5-cent per token market share, so thank you very much.
I know there was no charity on it. But anyway, it's great that this partnership. So move to Daniel. Daniel, he will introduce himself, but he has been on the technology agenda of the World Economic Forum for so many years, both in Geneva and in Davos. You know, the World Economic Forum basically projects the technology innovations that and every January here we are more or less setting the agenda for the year, right? Of what's going to be both the benefits and the risk of new technology emerging. So maybe Daniel, what is your roadmap? We are reaching out to tokenization. What is your view on how countries and organizations that they have been participating here in Davos are being adapting towards that revolution?
Thank you, Carlos, and I'm the last speaker of the last panel, so bear with me. I will try to. The wonderful lunch you're having right now is nothing compared to the intellectual feast that Carlos has hosted over the course of the morning, right? You had a quantum starter, you had the space main course, you have a Web 3.0 dessert. Allow me to be that digestive, that cognac, that grappa, that whatever your coffee, chamomile tea, a cigar, whatever you want, to bring it all together as a conclusion of the wonderful, wonderful day. As Carlos has said, the forum actually is really, really good at identifying future talent. They identified WISeKey as the growth company, the global champions way back when, and ever since supported this growth. I'm probably one of the very few people, except for Professor Schwab, who worked in every single office of the World Economic Forum, in every geography and every jurisdiction. Some of it were offices that the forum was running, some of it were joint ventures, like you said, for the fourth industrial revolution also. But let me tell you, I came from a country that did not exist on the map, political and political map of the world, just 30 years ago. And always been a huge fan of technology. Even my name is mispronounced Daniel because my parents were very big fans of Isaac Asimov, you know, the robot that runs the empires. So what we've seen so far in the innovation economy at the moment is what we could see with our eyes. But let me ask you, what do you think is the largest organ in the human body? It is a skin. Nobody normally does this. Is it the brain? Is it the heart? Is it the digestive tract? It's the skin. What is the largest living organism on Earth? It's a seaweed. It's the mushrooms. It's a mushroom roots. We have a wonderful expert on mushrooms in the room. You should talk to him. The amount of information mushrooms exchange under the ground is trillions times more than what we see on the top of the surface. And why am I talking to you about that? Because with what we will be witnessing in this SEALCOIN, we were in the barter economy of tokenization. We were still talking about, okay, the IoT was like, I'm giving you this type of information and I'm going to do this. Now we're moving from barter economy of IoT to the monetization of IoT. So we stop being here's my code and I get a little bit of your brain. We are now actually moving into the economies that can grow, that can prosper through this little innovation. Through these little tweaks, everybody now, the other big topic, of course, is AI. Everybody talks about AI as the new electricity. You know what was the first business model when electricity came out? The Edison days. What was the business model of electricity? They would be selling them by light bulbs. So you count how many light bulbs will be in your building in Europe, and that's how much you pay. And obviously that went out of the window, and now we have the electricity-powered economy that we all enjoyed for the past decade. Now that is the transformation that I see here. The tokenization, the IoT, everything that happened before is great. These were the necessary building steps. But what comes next, that's where excitement will happen. Already today, you go to talk to any of the guys on the promenade, they will tell you the bot traffic is overtaking human traffic on the regulation, right? They can throw you a number, 63%, 84%. Doesn't matter. And that's intelligence bot traffic. I'm talking about algos, right? What about the traffic that we don't even count anymore? The traffic is just multidimensional. 92% of it is unencrypted. The 92% of IoT traffic is unencrypted. The stuff that Carlos is doing with his team, with the root of trust, is something that is so exciting that happens underneath the ground that nobody is talking about for the past 20 years, but now we realize, another big, and I will stop, I promise you, the other panel, the space panel, fascinating, I'm a huge fan, forget geopolitics of today, astropolitics, that's where we should all be. But tell you what, NASA and other space agencies around the world have been experimenting with growing crops and plants in space for a number of years. And you know what the problem was with those experiments? That once they reach a certain height, they all fall over. Because there's no wind, there is no. And they figured out the most important part is the root. It's not what goes to the top, it's the root. And that's where the transformation that Carlos says is wonderful team that Tom, John, everybody over there is doing today. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I love the astropolitics, geopolitics, astropolitics. It's all about that. In the space panel, we discussed about the requirement of decentralizing access to the space, but also decentralizing the usage of the space. So, to be honest, I think this is the only way you can do that is by decentralizing the economy that is generated by space. And this is where SEALCOIN could make a major. Maybe Jonathan, because we announced at Hedera yesterday the pre-sale process. I got 1,000 emails. I don't even know how to answer them. Can you walk through the roadmap of SEALCOIN until the moment is there, and also the platform that has been developed?
Yes. Maybe let me start with what's a token. Not in the nitty-gritty, but why do we need a token? This token is the link between the cybersecurity at the hardware level, okay, and the digital integrity of our data. This is how you need to think about it. And this ownership of this cryptocurrency will give you access to things. What are the things? It's access to a platform where you can register your devices to prove the ownership and to control the data or the service you will distribute across the globe. Okay? And we do that through this token. Bear in mind that we're here in Switzerland, and we touched upon it a bit earlier on about regulation. This activity is fully regulated by the FINMA, the supervisor authority of the banks. And reading our white paper, they actually approve that this token is legal to be issued and to provide utility and a payment feature between devices. In terms of roadmap, we can happily announce that we're releasing our MVP platform today at Davos. What's an MVP platform? It's a minimum viable product where we can already start onboarding users to register themselves, the organization, if they belong to an organization, their devices, and register the services of their devices through this functioning platform embedded with the token, and functioning on testnet data. The roadmap is that we also announce the pre-sale of this token that will be executed across the next couple of weeks, where we will raise funds to make sure that we can actually target the ambition that we have for this global solution. With that in mind, in the next couple of weeks, we will also move this MVP platform to production on Hedera mainnet, which means that everyone's going to be able to access anywhere there might be this platform. What are the things maybe we might want to say?
Plus, we are making, and this is a bit of a combination between the space roundtable and the roundtable, we are testing a proof of concept between the space.
So in terms of proof of concept, we have several ones. One, of course, is around energy trading. Energy trading might come with a few hurdles called regulation. It's not always allowed to sell your surplus of energy from your solar panel to the car. But what about I purchase the storage capability of this electric vehicle and I will consume it later? So we have ways around that which are really relevant. The other proof of concept that we are happy to announce, and we had this wonderful conversation this morning with Julian, is that on the next launch we want to start enabling devices that won't have access to internet but will start communicating via the satellite to be able to execute the transaction through the satellite and have this peer-to-peer transaction, but also to start equipping the satellite with a wallet and our token, which means that the satellite, as much as the device are going to be able to do device as a service, the satellite is going to be able to provide satellite as a service for one communication, if you want to pay for one communication. And these are the use cases that we are opening all together. And again, it's not about SEALCOIN technology. SEALCOIN technology is, in a way, an ecosystem and a framework that is bringing together highly relevant technology. And when put together, we can actually start disrupting the way we envisage our day-to-day life.
Thank you very much. Just maybe because I'd like everybody to have the opportunity to have lunch, and also apologize to the audience of disturbing their lunch. Just maybe 2 minutes to clarify the structure of WISeKey. So WISeKey is a Swiss holding company. It is a company which is listed in the Swiss stock exchange and has an ADR2 program in the Nasdaq. So that's a 25 years old company. I founded in 1999, and this company has evolved as a holding. Then WISeKey made an M&A transaction. So one of the transactions was on semiconductor. We acquired a semiconductor company in France. We restructured that semiconductor company. We inject for cybersecurity, the root key of WISeKey, into the device level. We were the first company in the world doing that, and that created CLSQ. Then CLSQ was a spin-off. We did a listing on the Nasdaq, $250 million listing. We raised money. We raised $100 million, and it's trading now around $500 million company. So that's CLSQ. Then, and the same thing is happening now with WISeSat. WISeSat has been a spin-out. We have WISeSat as a Zoom company, 100% owned by WISeKey. There are some investment decisions that they're going to be taking in the future. And our model will be the same we did with CLSQ. Will be to go to the Nasdaq, do an IPO or a listing. And the reason we do that because those listings allow us to refinance the holding that allows us to invest in the next technology cycle. So the holding is the engine to launch new projects. So that's the WISeSat. SEALCOIN is in the same thing. SEALCOIN was 100% owned company by WISeKey Holding. Hedera entered into the capital. Hedera is a shareholder, and our vocation is not an IPO because this is a token company, but will be to exit through a ICO or equivalent. And then we have another one, which by the way, Hedera is also involved, which we're not covering this year because it was overwhelming, which is WISeArt. And WISeArt is you can go wise.art. It is a platform, a very interesting platform, which thousands of artists now, they are uploading their digital art. It is a platform that is tokenizing art, both physical and virtual art. It has become a reference because contrary to other competitors like OpenSea and others, that they don't pay attention to cybersecurity and trust, WISeArt has done it from the beginning. Actually, it is based on the WISeKey platform, cryptographic with key identity provision and everything. So WISeArt is also being tokenized, and in the future will also be launched as an ICO. And this is the idea. The idea, obviously, we could have done that in the United States and be maybe a very big company, but we wanted to create the Swissness of the operation. And the reason is because we live in Switzerland, we are Swiss, our kids are Swiss, and we have to invest in the country, right? So we are obviously open to cooperation, teaming with whoever wants to create innovation in Switzerland. Now, because we are strongly financially, we can also contribute to investments, and that's the message, basically. The message is that in the next 10 years, Switzerland could become one of the major players of the digital economy. So with that, I would like to thank everybody, the panel, also the audience for your amazing participation. If you have any questions before we close to any of the panelists, and if you don't, I would just ask you to give them a hand for their amazing work.
That is also the topic of my last project to be published tomorrow. Technology is agnostic. Innovation is ideologist. Technology just allows features. And innovation, what is the mindset of the business model behind is what makes the difference. And for all of you that don't understand these decentralized technologies, just to mention that you can have a very centralized business model using blockchain technology if the design is like that. And how SEALCOIN supports this decentralized economy is that imagine that you are a company that has a lot of information of your clients. You don't have any incentive to share any feature of your client with other company because then you have to give all their information. Telephone number, birth data, whatever. And what is centralized, in the other hand, you have decentralization that are like small nodes or hubs or these monopolistic types of information, and that with technologies like the one that Hedera provides, allows to interact. For instance, that the IoT can send an alarm to a drone saying.
For instance, we put a chip on the dish and we go all to have a lunch.
Exactly.
And you are the name of the activity. Thank you guys. You know, everybody now to have a lunch. Thank you and bon appetit to everybody. Take care.
Wise people. We published and released the Transhuman Code here at Davos. It became a global bestseller. And we continue this dialogue, which is really built on the foundation that Carlos has built his businesses with, which is the significance and importance of trust and management and responsibility. Delighted to announce that CNBC, who bought the rights to the Transhuman Code, have committed to Humanity at the Crossroads, which we'll be introducing in a global broadcast there tomorrow at the Sanctuary. There is a live studio audience there, in addition to the millions that will see it online and on network, but you're more than happy to come and join us. We'd love to have you. It's at 12:30 at the Sanctuary. You will not need to pay to get in. Yeah, but how do we? We'll post it. I'll post a link for you to register, but even if you don't register, you can register on site. There's been a lineup at the Sanctuary around the block for the last couple of days. I try and get there half an hour early if you can to get a seat. I think it's going to be an exciting conversation, and we'll continue the dialogue around the significance and importance of keeping humans at the center of gravity in that relationship.
Thank you very much.